They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed. Disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to Rogue Ways, where tonight we get to explore one of my own favorite areas of study, and that is Gnosticism. I usually go the non-religious cult route, and so I don't lend a lot of credence to the Archonic worldview outside of accepting that there are entities that definitely have been given power to rule by us. But it is super exciting to get a take on this, and I'm sure it has many cross-ins with our previous episodes with Chance of Darchetypal Tarot inversions and drug portals and entities at festivals, and that we've both done these on his show Innerverse and on Rogue Ways, and so we are in for a treat to see how the mashup continues. Chance is a powerhouse of presence and depth of thought that dives deeper than most rabbit holes and beyond the font of most wells. He is the I Ching oracle reader who brings a heart-centered connection to channel truth into this realm from beyond, and he is the soul-guided badass who weaves and wanders farther than most to bring us all back to the choicest nuggets of goodness and reminders of our never-ending essence, anchoring it all together right here and right now. It's Chance Garton of Innerverse. Chance, welcome back to Rogue Ways. How are you doing tonight?
So glad to be here. Sounding good still. I'm on a kind of different setup. If you can't tell, I'm in the same state as you, which you already know. I'm on like a family vacation right now, and they're patiently letting me take this this side room out of our little bungalow and do my thing. And because I really didn't want to miss this if I didn't have to.
I'm very lucky that you wanted to go through with it, and I think it's funny that we're usually 2 states away, and now we're 2 hours away, basically.
Yeah, I think there may be a way for us to like hang out, kick it. I'd love to bring the family down to Garden of the Gods. That'd be pretty fun. Super. Or tempt you into coming to a concert here that's on Wednesday. One of my favorite bands just happens to be in town.
Could happen.
Looks pretty awesome. Should be cool. It's at Red Rocks, which is neat.
I've never been there. I've actually been wanting an excuse to go, so you never know.
Yeah, well, I've never been either. I've heard amazing things my whole life, so that could work. I'm telling you, they're a good live show. It's been a few years since I've seen anybody live, hardly, but could be awesome. Yeah. So I wanted to open us up with a I Ching card. You know, I Ching is my thing, and this is an interesting one. For whatever reason, there's been a lot of, if people follow me on Telegram, I've been doing morning draws lately for the I Ching, and I use other decks too. It's like a 3-card thing, kind of copying Michael Wan's approach. I mean, I've done that type of thing before using 3 different decks, but he was like, I do this every day. And I'm like, I see the value in that, and I want to practice. So anyway, there's been a serious theme on like pregnancy, oddly enough. Yeah. I don't know what that means, but it could be because we're approaching a full moon right now, a big full moon, and the full moon is kind of pregnant with the thing that we've been charging it with the whole month up to now, if you will. So this is earth and earth, or yin and yin, like basic earth, if you will. This is just the pure feminine principle as a card. It is matching energy up and down. Passive and active sides of this are actually the same thing. So it's like a perfect self-contained feminine receptivity. And what is important to understand about why this card is coming up is because we're going to be getting into a concept called mysteria. And we'll talk about that more, but a big theme of this show, and I find it very interesting that this comes up, is receptivity. What are we receptive to? Whose ideas are they? Are they our own ideas? What can that do to us? Because part of the transhuman maneuver, I mean, this is a very positive and beautiful card. I mean, look at this art, right? Yeah. It's just like, it almost looks like a face made out of a pregnant belly and mammary glands, if you will. But the issue here that we're running into on planet Earth right now is actually over feminization. And that has nothing to do with specific men and women genders. It means men and women becoming inverted in a feminized way. And all that means has nothing to do with gender, like I'm saying, other than in the terms of universal gender, yin and yang, one is receptive and one is active. And when we get overly identified or balanced onto a receptive mode, it makes us very programmable. And that's the perfect recipe for like human bots, if you will, robots, which robot even just means slave in Slavic, or I think it's Slavic, the language it came from. I could be mixing that up because Slavic sounds like slave. So go fact check me. But I know the word robot has etymology referring to like a slave. So wherever it comes from. So very appropriate card, like I said, definitely represents the earthly, the earth mother. And that's something that the further humanity goes into transhumanism, the further away we get from that. So it's like, it's literally showing us both what we need to get back to and the direction that things are going in the negative sense. So that's actually a beautiful card to pull off the top of the
really
deck
perfect.
there. It is. It always is perfect. It knows what to do. I Ching's wild.
It is wild. I love that we do have this inverted feminine, and over feminization is a really good way to describe it. And especially we basically have a dearth of masculine. The divine masculine is not really present anywhere, and it's been attacked steadily for so long, and we have just very little of it. But it's interesting too to think about how the feminine and the earth itself and that energy can be like the healing force to that exact problem. It's interesting. I liked how Phoenix Aurelius, when he was on, was talking about how some of the medicine that you want most is going to be last year's herb of whatever kind might help with your specific situation that's going on, because your situation was created over the past year, or maybe even started back then. And back then was when the earth was like noticing this problem was going to be coming and like creating all the right things to come out into her beautiful little plants and starts and whatever. And so that's exactly what has the remedy that you need. And it was just like, of course it's like that, right? Of course the earth is like, like looking and seeing, just like a mother would. Like, where are they headed? Okay, they might need mittens. Let's make some mittens for them. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I love that concept. So it's a beautiful energy. And especially, like you said, the more we dive into all this dark, especially transhumanism, and the just negation of all that is human, the more we're going to need our connection to the earth, because that's where we came from. It's going to remind us.
Exactly. I mean, it's the poison and the medicine all wrapped up in one. And yeah, like I said, the feminization, if you will, this applies to men and women, both. And like the feminized man becomes a servant of Medusa, basically. Like there's a lot of images of femininity being pushed right now that are very far from healthier balance. And then it becomes up to the PC principal male to defend that kind of monstrous inversion of womankind in the chivalric sense. Yeah. And so we have this weird dynamic of an inverted masculine serving an inverted feminine, and it mirrors perfectly what the actual dynamic is supposed to be in nature between the two, which is that, we protect this earth mother, we protect our mothers, we men do that. And then in a heroic, in a sense, like masculine female, because we both should embody both of these halves or these poles, would also be able to protect and nurture at the same time. So that is actually, like you were saying, it's both it's also the cure, because when it comes to the type of people we see running the world right now, well, they all had mothers that raised them. And especially now that there's so many fewer fathers in the homes, that it's even more on the mother. And that's just been on my mind a lot. I've learned from great teachers like Tessarion about this too. And the dynamic I'm talking about is very appropriate, because when we get into Gnosticism, this mother-son relationship is a very important element of it. And maybe I won't linger too much on that, but I really do believe that mothers could totally turn this around. I mean, every female hating, tyrannical, domineering man came from a mother who raised him to hate women.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't always blame everything on the mom, but a good mom can nip a lot of shit in the bud. I know for myself that my mom taught me the primary lessons that I've carried forward in my life forever, mostly about choice and free will, and about no matter what's going on, you can choose to do the right thing. And I was like, that's all I needed.
Yeah.
A heroic mother would teach their children that. But right now, now I'm going to go into a side tangent, but like even when a baby's in the womb, the mother, this is proven, the mother's self-talk actually programs the baby while it's in the womb. So a mother that's in victimization, embracing victimization, enjoying the currency of being a victim, like we see so much today, and is encouraged, very encouraged, that sort of, yeah, like just welfare wannabe, if you will. And I don't mean to like knock someone who takes welfare. I'm just meaning like this entitled, the victim that becomes the perpetrator. All that's programming the baby while it's in the womb. So it goes from the beginning, like the mother creates the experience for that child in a huge degree.
Yeah.
My mom fell and broke her ankle while she was pregnant with me, and maybe that's why I'm kind of clumsy.
Yeah, it's seriously beyond what a lot of people think, and we can even go into epigenetic memory and how our genetics carry all sorts of encoding too. But also the moment of production of the sperm, the state of health that the man is in is going to predispose the child to certain levels of health or certain tendencies with their health as well. So it's just so interesting. It's like far before you've actually, had the moment of conception or whatever, you're creating this child. It's like all
Yeah,
that
it's so
energy going
true.
into
And
it.
then like, why would people think that that's not immediately a life form is beyond me, but we won't
Yeah.
go there. We don't.
Yeah.
We all know.
Well, I want to pause really quick because I actually want to tell everyone while you're here that Chance and I and Catherine O'Shea and Alan Cisco are putting together the One Day of Brightness summer solstice event. It's actually on the 19th, not on the solstice, because the solstice is Father's Day. We want to give those fathers all the love they deserve, get that masculine beefed up there. And so this event is going to be on the 19th. It is a day of brightness. It is, past events, people have said things like we're putting together a team of spiritual superhero badasses, or things like how rejuvenating, recharging, and uplifting this event is. And I know that 100% of people who have taken part in the past have gone away with more than they thought that they were going to get out of this event. And so I highly recommend it. People, especially if you haven't gone before, that you come to this summer solstice event. And it's just a day of awesomeness. There's all sorts of stuff. So Chance is going to be presenting and teaching and leading practices that day, as well as Catherine and Alan and myself. And I just hope to see everybody there. And also my new book, All Endings Are Beginnings, is out. I finally have it in my hand. It's just a little pick-me-up, God-shot oracle of a book full of inspirational little boosts for your day, and it's perfect. So if you want a signed copy, go to the site and grab one. And if you want to just support and grab a copy, then you can get it from Amazon as well. Both are good, just whatever you want for yourself. And I just wanted to throw that out there. And then ask the pointless question of the episode, which, Chance, I was going to ask you the famous question put forth by the Pixies: where is my mind?
Oh man, maybe it. I mean, to me, it's possible for mind to exist outside of body to some degree. I mean, I've been outside of body, but while I'm here and while I'm present, I'm rooted in this thing. And my mind feels to me like it's distributed throughout this whole system, this whole energy system. It's not up here, not even just here. It's my tummy, it's my toes, it's all up and down. And that's kind of where my mind is at right now, rooted in this body, this amazing thing that I have no desire to replace any of the parts with robot parts.
Yeah, I'm with you. Those structures we see in those like chakras of various systems and all of these things kind of inform you of that same sort of idea, right? Of that this is a whole system going on here. It isn't if it was just in one place. There was a girl. This is just so random, and then we'll get
Actually,
into,
real quick, before you say that, my mind isn't just there. It's actually kind of like filling up this whole room because my awareness through this camera, I can see what's behind me and stuff. So like, I don't know, you kind of, it's like water. It takes the shape of its container. And that's why it's so good to get outside, open up that mental map. I was
like
just
that.
exploring around Denver at a really awesome trail, went on like a 2.5, 3 mile barefoot hike through the mountain hilly path, and some good times right there. I'm feeling really great about that. My mind opened up all kinds of things I've never seen, an entire environment for me to fill that space with my awareness. And yeah, so I wanted to add to that. It's also kind of like the whole room you're in.
Yeah, it's like wherever you put it, really. It's wherever you direct it.
Good question.
It's definitely a non-local. It's a non-local thing most of the time, but because we are here having this experience with this body, this beautiful tool, it's also very much rooted and centered here. Well, good answer too. And then let's start talking about. Let's get into it. You have this whole Archonic transhumanist agenda sort of broken down. So where do you want to take us first? I also will agree, and anyone who knows me for any amount of time knows this, that I have absolute. I try not to go towards hatred, but I have just an aversion that is very primal and strong towards electronics, robotics, AI, and everything that is like the essence of transhumanism is what they want. That humans can become better if we just merge with the machine more and more, and like these things are beyond us, and that whole idea is so foreign to me, and I wonder if you feel the same too, that it's similar to me, that I've had even when I believed that space was physically real and a place that you could maybe go to, which I'm not so sure about anymore, I still had no desire to ever go there. Even if the world was crumbling and burning and going to be hit by an asteroid, I'm like, I'm going to go down with my mom. Like, why would I want to be somewhere else but here? This is the place. This is where I came from.
I'm a little different. I love the tech when it's in its place and it doesn't own me.
Yeah.
I do IT work. I do all basically every way that I make money is on a computer, and there's a million different ways. It's not like making money is what makes it fun, but I like to tame the tech. I like to work with it. It's fun. I mean, it's cool to have toys. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just that when you let this thing become a parasite that jumps in your body, I mean, I see a lot of problems even with my own usage of it being a little much, but technology itself isn't the problem. In fact, I think that it's necessary that we use technology to a degree. I wanted to make this plug anyway, but I came up with a clever segue. One of the most recent episode of my show with Mitch, the organ donor, who you're going to have on, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, next month.
Yeah, so that guy, about Orgonite. I mean, you talk about it, but he sent me this beautiful piece. And this is tech where someone asked an amazing question in the live chat when I was premiering the video with him. And this episode, I feel like everyone should check it out or wait till Lindsay talks to him, but both would be good because we're going to talk about different things. He was asked in the live chat, like, why can't we just do this cleaning of the EMF fields and the chemtrails with our own mind, our own frequency and power? And in a nutshell, I mean, he explained it way better, but he was like, they're unleashing all kinds of crazy technology to do this frequency war. And until the point where we put a curb to that, we really probably do need our own version of tech to cancel out that tech. But this is one of the pieces he's made, and I was using it as a coaster for this amazing organic juice I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And he was showing in the video that we did, he sent me some pictures of he would put a cup of water in the fridge, or in the freezer, with one of these pieces of Orgonite under it, like resting the cup on it, let it freeze. And when you open the freezer and look at the ice cube that's in the cup, there would be a spiral vortex motion, like the water was structured. Some of them even had a full-on air bubble in where it froze with a spiral-shaped hollow cavity. Amazing. So amazing. This is my first time using one of those things as a coaster. I bet is a great idea though. And I wanted to plug that episode over on my channel. I think it's one of the most relevant pieces of content you could look at because I don't know. I mean, he showed a lot of evidence that he's making a headway and people like him are making a dent in this frequency fence. And that means that the agendas we're talking about right here, we have some maneuvers that we can easily take into our own hands and do something about it. So, but this conversation, we're mainly going to be focusing on the mind side, like what we believe, why we believe it, how we got there. So without further ado, maybe we should jump into
the content. Well, and I want to say too, that's a good distinction because tech can be anything that you use, that you create to do a job. It's just like the same word as tool almost in that way. And so technology, I mean, a pencil is technically technology, right? Just as is orgone, and all the cool things it can do. So yeah, I do when I'm talking about how much I hate technology, I really am saying the electronic stuff, which I know has purpose and I am using right now, but I have a basic urge to destroy it all too. But anyways, here we go on. Yeah.
I think I'll just try the screen share. I'm like
Oh,
such a
sure.
nerd, but I want to full
Yeah,
screen it. So you
absolutely.
might have to give me permission.
Oh, yes.
I know you're
I
having
always,
trouble with the PowerPoint side.
I always forget to give people
Yeah,
permission.
I just saw it wasn't full screen and I was just like, must be
Yes,
perfect.
I'm down. Either way, I think
This
you're
way I
proficient
can
now.
drive the slides. So, all right, let's give that a shot. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. Now, that should do it. Okay.
That looks
I
way
won't be able
better.
to see you, but
Good
here's
call.
an image from Assassin's Creed, one of the Assassin's Creed games. Just think it's pretty wild what goes on in some of these video games. And that's actually a big part of this conversation is how video games tie in to, well, this thesis is called virtual unreality. And this first slide is about simulated reality, but we need to understand that conceptual realities that we hold onto in our mind, cosmologies, these are simulations. Well, maybe we'll get, I'll just go, I think I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't know if it's on a slide, but simulation means hypocrisy. So I think there's something I need to turn off here real quick in case it's making sounds, little notification sounds. Turn that off. I'll move on to the next slide. Jean Baudrillard from Simulacra and Simulation. Hyperreality. The media represents world that is more real than reality that we can experience. People lose the ability to distinguish between reality and fantasy. They also begin to engage with the fantasy without realizing what it really is. They seek happiness and fulfillment through the simulacra of reality, that is media, and avoid the contact or interaction with the real world.
Yeah.
This is an important book. This book inspired, I mean, it was like one of the books on, in the movie The Matrix, actually, when Neo is getting like paying, like someone's paying him for a program. They come to his apartment. It's before he gets unplugged. He has a book that's hollowed out that he has this like illegal software in or whatever. And then the cover is this book.
You're like,
They're trying to tell you.
even
They're
the
trying to
book
tell
is
you.
a simulation of a book.
It's meta as fuck.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's interesting because people don't realize too that, you know, children who are, they've studied, you know, have watched even cartoons like Daffy Duck and stuff where they're like, you know, bashing the mouse with a frying pan or something. Kids, you know, their brains, they don't distinguish between that violence and real violence. Their brains are still taking it in as violence, and then every time they see it, they're like, this is acceptable, this is acceptable, this is acceptable. And you're like training them, and so it is true that humans like really can't, you're especially on a subconscious level, distinguish between that and this. It's just very, it's terrifying to think about. What are you doing to your brain if you're, like you said, playing these games or
what about
in
those
media
babies you see
anytime?
at the grocery store holding an iPad while their mom is shopping
Oh my
or whatever?
God. Yeah, it makes me so sad. And people are like, don't judge them. I'm like, I'm judging you. Not sorry.
This is child abuse.
It is. It is.
I judge child abuse harshly.
Exactly.
It's not me. It's like, you know, my conscience. I just can't help it.
Yeah. It's knowing that there's a reason why all the people who develop these technologies don't give it to their children, you know, like Bill Gates.
Yeah,
and like,
they openly say so.
yeah. Because they know it's an addiction and it deteriorates their abilities. Their cognitive abilities are deteriorated the more screen time they have.
But it's not just screen time. It's Sunday school. I was just talking about it to my young brother-in-law and sister-in-law about when we were in Sunday school, we were told this is what you must think and there's no questions really about it. And that's a whole nother level of simulation. And we are really in the type of situation where it's like Inception. There's a simulation and then you get out of that one and you're still in one and you get out of that one and you're still in one.
Yeah.
But simulation means hypocrisy. That's what the key phrase, simulation means hypocrisy. Nothing fancy about it, nothing technological. You're not inside of a giant computer, at least not in my opinion. I mean, think that if you want, but again, you ain't proved it to me. I say ain't, sorry. Missouri's coming out.
I think ain't is a perfectly acceptable word. As an English teacher, it serves a purpose and it is conjugated appropriately, so it's cool.
Sure, exactly. Exactly. So we're going to get into that. I'm going to go ahead and pull this back up. A book that I think is a must read, at least the first half of this book, Disciples of the Mysterium, An Inquiry into Selfhood by Michael Tessarion. Oh boy, this is, we're just going to take little bite-sized nuggets out of this, but it's a text that you would want to highlight almost every paragraph and just And then you realize, oh, I can't highlight the important passages of this book. It's just important.
It's all,
I just
every
need to read it
sentence.
all. Yeah.
That's a well-written
Very
book.
quotable, though. Mysterium is the notion that there's a higher reality beyond this universe. It's a phantasm with the same date of birth as the ego. Mysterium is an irrational projection and identification with a phantasmagoria invented by minds incapacitated by isolation and fear.
Wow.
It's a bombshell. There's more explaining about this to be done. But this is what we mean when we're talking about mysterium. The way that I summarize it is that I have a slightly different definition, not a definition, but like an addendum, which is that mysteria is getting stuck in ideas about ideas that were somebody else's idea to begin with. And it's just systems of thought that are not rooted in any reality. And actually, I got another quote from just...
It's like it's not something you experienced or could even sense in any way. It's just these completely disconnected sort of wanderings.
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, it's just like unprovable, you know, untangible. We'll get more into it. But I wanted to, this isn't in my slides, but it's a quote that I found in Wilhelm Reich's Ether, God, and Devil, also a great book. And he says, it's a short quote, "We observe that human thought systems show tolerance as long as they adhere to reality. The more the thought process is removed from reality, the more intolerance and cruelty are needed to guarantee its continued existence."
I need to hear it again. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm
sorry, everyone.
Yeah, this is deep stuff. "We observe that human thought systems show tolerance, systems of thought show tolerance, as long as they adhere to reality. The more the thought process is removed from reality, the more intolerance and cruelty are needed to guarantee its continued existence."
That makes so much sense. That it's like, it's so funny, like how long it took me to like grasp it, and then I'm like, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like
It's just
that
like
with
people
so many
don't
things.
talk like this.
Well, and like there's just so many things that you never take the time or have never, nobody talks like it, and you've never taken the time to really like lay it out yourself, but you understand it intrinsically. It's like that idea that like you're remembering things. Actually, you're like not necessarily even learning anything new. You already kind of know everything, but you have to like remember it and like unlayer all the shit that isn't actually real in order to get back to it.
Yeah, and then the other thing Reich talks about that's so, oh man, that book is just off the chain.
And
I'm only a couple chapters in.
If
Reich,
people don't know, is the guy who basically invented the term orgone to describe this energy that's everywhere in the universe, like the force, for lack of a better word, or like chi, like prana. That's just this energy that's everywhere, and he compared it to like the organism, because an organism is it's fueled by orgone, but also the orgasm. They have the same sort of root, and so he talks about that too, which people get less comfortable with, I guess, or whatever. But that's who Reich is. He's the creator.
Oh yeah, that was
of
the
orgone.
beginning of his downfall, was when he started talking about studying the orgasm. You can't study orgasms.
Yeah.
That's just what that makes babies, and otherwise we pretend it's not a thing. And yeah,
Despite
and
that
all the spiritual traditions, they're like, no orgasm, must retain and internally implode, or you're a sinner, or whatever.
But it's interesting that every major tradition connects sexual energy with spiritual energy.
That's not wrong.
One.
That's not wrong at
Can't be
all.
an accident.
Yeah, it's a cosmic thing. Orgasms connect us to the cosmic energy in some sense. I mean, I'm still wanting to brush up on more Reich to get his take on that, but in Ether, God, and Devil, he starts to delineate what goes on in terms of Mysteria, I guess, which is Tessarion's word. I'm sure he's influenced by Reich greatly. I know that for a fact, actually. And emotional plague, people with emotional plague, as Reich puts it, actually end up coming out as mechanistic or mystic. And in this sense, mystic is negative because it's like not grounded in reality. In the same way, but just on the opposite end of the polarity, like as mechanistic is not grounded in reality. You can't explain everything by breaking it down to its parts. You try to strip away, peel everything off the canvas and find out what the bottom layer is, and then there's no canvas. That's what quantum physics told us, right?
Right.
So we need something in the middle between mystic and mechanistic. And Reich had that nailed, but most people, they're on one side or the other.
That's true.
We need our feet on the ground and our head in the stars.
Yeah.
Tessarion says that too, which I love that. So anyway, we got to keep that in mind. We're getting into talking about Gnosticism in a little bit. I'll share that slide, if you don't mind me continuing to drive us forward, because there's a lot to look at.
Absolutely.
What is Gnosticism? We'll give a brief summary here. And this is important. This is a very important key moment for everybody. Listen up, listen up. We've all studied Gnosticism to some degree, most likely, if we've made it to this part of the deep end. Mm-hmm. We all know something about it. We think we know something about it. What most of us don't know is the roots of this thing and the branches of it throughout society and culture. And what's important here, why I'm telling you to listen up, is because I'm not saying that anything that you've experienced to be personally true or that you hold and accept or believe to be true are incorrect, Gnostic themed or flavored or not, but that we need to think about what I'm bringing out here about Gnosticism, about the sort of pop culture surface reading of what the story is of, the Wikipedia entry story about Gnosticism. Because the elite class, to me, Tessarion has proven it in some of his research, some of his 5 hours or 6 hours worth of Gnosticism videos where he goes through like the history of the thing. But my computer just asked to restart. Okay, It's going to wait an hour and then ask me again.
Yeah.
I'll probably still be here at that point.
Yeah.
But what's important is that we figure out the mysteria in this conversation. We figure out what is rooted in reality and what isn't. So I'm going to be offering some interpretations of terms and concepts from Gnosticism as we go forward that are more rooted in something real, something that we know exists. Now, does that mean that on sort of a as above, so below level, that there are no other fractal manifestations of these concepts, archons or what have you? I can't tell you that. So I'm not here to dismiss and sweep away everything you've ever accepted about reality that might have a Gnostic tone. But I sure hope that you can rethink all of it right now in this conversation and figure out what is and what isn't life affirming.
Yes. What's
mechanistic, what's mystical, and find yourself in the middle in a biophilic worldview, life loving, life enhancing, not necrophilic, not believing in death over life or loving death over life or we're going to get into all this. So I'm just going to continue forward. But the basic story of Gnosticism in a small nutshell
is that there's really quick.
Oh yeah, please.
And Chance is talking about the actual like tradition of the religious cult of Gnosticism, not the idea of actual Gnosticism, which if you take just the word and the actual idea and what a lot of people probably intended at some point or another, is in that Gnosticism is that whatever you know truly, that's it. That's what you know. And that's it. That's all there is to Gnosticism. It's that you shouldn't believe. It's just like Crow says, that belief isn't the enemy of knowing. Like that's the essence of Gnosticism. Like there should be nothing actually that you believe. There should be only things that you've experienced and therefore know and that you can measure, and not like in the materialistic like super hyper rational sense either, but like that you don't know that there's a God until you've been with God and experienced God, and otherwise you just don't know. So that's very, very different from this Gnosticism that we're talking about tonight, which is the religious Gnosticism that is a organized system and cosmology and all of that.
Yeah, and so like the nutshell of that story is that you've got a God, an eternal pleroma, everything. Jung even calls it abraxas, which I think Jung's Seven Sermons to the Dead is a really sweet Gnostic text.
Yeah.
Awesome. So not everything Gnostic is bad. Don't get me wrong.
Well, Jung's Gnosticism looked at the religious Gnosticism, but his actual take on it and his way of doing or being it was more in line with the actual word Gnostic and Gnosticism, not the like religious tradition of Gnosticism.
yeah. And that religious tradition, we're gonna consider how it's trickled down and actually influenced everything in the desert sky god religions.
Everything.
So you have the original god, the pleroma, the all, and then it has emanations. And one of these emanations, who knows how many there are really, but in Gnostic texts, there's different takes on this. That's part of the fun of Gnostic information, is that all kinds of different schools on this. But one in particular, an emanation of the divine source was Sophia, which means wisdom. So literally, the wisdom of source became its own independent entity in this cosmology. Well, we're already pretty far into Mysteria in just these two sentences. I mean, can you please point to Sophia and show me again? But we'll continue. So just keep that in mind where we're at in terms of Mysteria throughout any story, but especially this one. Sophia then births another being. Long story short, it's like a weird, evil lion baby creature. It's got many names. Yaldabaoth is the primary name for it. We're going to get into all that. We're going to define these terms and look at these characters. But anyway, that's the basic Gnostic cosmology, that Yaldabaoth is born of Sophia. He's a lower god below the real god. And he built this realm as a prison for us. But hopefully I'm not repeating too much of what's on my slides. If so, we'll just kind of blow through them. And you did bring up that Gnostic means to know and that's true. That is true. The Gnostics were a sect of philosophers. I'm going to pull a lot of 1828 Webster's Dictionary definitions out of here, by the way. I always love to use that book. But they are a sect of philosophers, this is according to Webster's, who arose in the first ages of Christianity, who pretended they were the only men who had a true knowledge of the Christian religion. They formed for themselves a system of theology agreeable to the philosophy of Pythagoras, the Python, if you will, and Plato, to whom they accommodated their interpretations of scripture. They held that all natures, intelligible, intellectual, and material, are derived by successive emanations from the infinite fountain of deity. These emanations they called aeons. These doctrines were derived from the Oriental philosophy. So man, right there back in the early 1800s, they actually were onto something that's been totally obscured at this point, which is that this is coming from the East. This type of stuff is coming from the East. It goes back all the way to Confucianism.
Wow.
When you start really digging. But on the right here, this is a picture of a boss character from the game Final Fantasy 14, a big MMO artificial world where you fight a monster goddess called Sophia. And she's really scary. I've got more pictures of her. The Final Fantasy series is chock full of Gnostic stuff, like too much to be kind of an accident. I know the Japanese love to use like Western culture and occultism and just like sprinkle it in as flavoring and decoration in their fiction. It's an anime thing, but there's too specific in some of the stuff we're going to cover. So I'm going to move us forward. But yeah, man, there's so many things I could say to add to this. It's a really big can of worms, but we're going to try to stay on point with this prez. I'm already enjoying it quite a bit. Okay, we'll breeze through this, but the Nag Hammadi scriptures are Coptic books found in Egypt in 1945. There was a lot of repression of these texts from the church, the Catholic Church. Didn't seem to want them to get out. I haven't spent a lot of time with them myself, but this was what brought a new resurgence of that word into the current century. So people can look into that for themselves. It's not the only source of what you'd call Gnostic information or text, but we're going to skip through that unless Lindsay has anything she wants to say about Nag Hammadi particularly.
You should read it.
Yeah. And you know what? There's some really great conceptualizations that could be helpful in a lot of these Gnostic texts. It's just like what the real problem is a corruption of worldview. Here's someone cosplaying as Sophia from that game Final Fantasy 14. I just put this slide in here because I was like, people cosplay this stuff. They take it seriously and they might not even know where it's coming from.
And even her eyes are all black. Ew.
Yeah. I thought that it was great to grab these. We're talking about corrupted mother energy, if you will. Yeah. Well, I think that's what the AI is. I think the AI is a evil mom. Ooh. I don't think it's masculine. It's very receptive. Maybe it has both sides, but it seems to be in a sense, like a feminizing force, in my opinion.
Very
It's very
interesting
receptive in
point.
itself
Yeah.
because it's just constantly taking in all the
Everything.
information of everything at all times. It's literally like a panopticon of intake. So I don't know what's more receptive than that on a yin and yang level.
Yeah. Wow. Good point. I will
They
say
even
this person
think
has
about how
done.
many fictions have their AI named something like the Resident Evil movies. It was like the Red Queen
Yeah.
or
True.
whatever. They're even naming like
Well, and the
androids and shit that they're making Sophia. Like I've heard of
Sophia,
this
I was gonna
happening.
say the face of robotics and AI really is Sophia. That's the most commonly known AI front face shape. It's called Sophia.
Dude, I think that the controller cults are very gnostic, and like I said, Michael's got a lot of work on that proves it. Where it came from, at what point, like the Hebrews and the Tree of Life, Kabbalistic
Yeah.
traditions split off and decided that because of their hardships, that actually their previous god must actually be the bad guy, and it's really interesting how all this began. Because yeah, the Gnostics believe Jehovah is Yaldabaoth is actually a bad guy. But then when you get
Yeah.
into what the word Jehovah means, you're like, wait a minute, that's not even a guy. It's not
Yeah.
even a character. It's a verb.
It's a set
What?
of ideas. It's really interesting. That's the main tenet of the religious Gnosticism is that this is a prison and that the God that created this and holds us here is like the God that people call God and they worship him. You're like you're worshiping your prisoner, your prison keeper, just like Stockholm syndrome or whatever, you know. That's the
Yeah, and
nutshell
in a way
version.
they are. In a
Yeah.
way they are when you think about what like mainstream Christianity or Islam is really like. They are because they've made it into a noun, and the noun is what's got people all removed from nature in the first place,
Yeah.
removed from Tao, the belief of being a person, place, or thing. You know, NPCs are persons, they're personas, they're masks. But I have more characters from Final Fantasy 14 on the left and right. This is Lakshmi, which just to prove that like the same concept is an Eastern concept. And then in the middle here's Sophia from FF14, some
Huh.
fan art or something. I'm not sure, but she's like all over the globe in space. Very bizarre symbolism. And then on the right, I didn't mean to go looking for this, but while I was Googling images of this game and character, I found the maybe the scariest thing of all was that somebody put this on their body.
Yeah.
And what blew my mind was that if you look at the letters around his above his junk there, there's only one word that I can make that out to be, and it's hopeless.
Wow. Yeah.
That was a synchromistic find on Google image search that just like this tells the story. Here's the feminized man chivalrically serving the Gorgon, if you will. And that's tells the whole story of PC principle and why we've got this crazy leftist communist takeover here. Wild stuff.
Wow. Yeah. Seriously. Poor guy.
Yeah, you know, get whatever tattoos you want, but when you put the word hopeless on your body, I'm gonna look at you like, man,
Well,
that's what you're saying you are.
it's
Looks
like you
like it.
said, like what's life affirming and what's life rejecting, and hopelessness with this image on your body is not very life affirming. Like my tattoos were literally, like homages to these moments where I had the most life affirming realizations of my existence. They're like
Hey,
reminders so I can never forget,
someone
Not
like this probably still plays this game. It's still an active game. He probably lives in there.
yeah.
And he probably got his vaccine so that he'd be safe while isolated in his apartment playing an
Yeah.
MMO with people on the internet.
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so the demiurge is another name for Yaldabaoth and is very often associated with a lion. I'm not totally sure why that is, but there's probably something to do with Hermeticism and the fact that Leo is the height of the strength of the sun,
Yeah.
and we've already started mixing things up. I mean, this all this stuff in the past that we still have now is just a really big mixed up soup, and that's why I go to words to get what a word really meant when it was first a word, or at
Yeah.
least as far back as I can easily go.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, things become rooted in reality. And you can interpret this at least in one way. I mean, believe it in demiurge if you want. Fine. I personally don't, but it makes no sense. And I'll get into contradictions about that. But, if you want to, it's okay. I'm not judging you. I'm not going to like tell you to change your cosmology, but I am not going to agree.
Yeah.
So here's man, pictures from Final Fantasy VIII, the final boss characters of the game, a sorceress who controls all reality across time. and her monster lion baby thing.
Very
Yeah, so
Gnostic.
very Gnostic. I mean, Final Fantasy VIII, I love that game actually, but it's super Gnostic and it's all about sorceresses as the bad guys that are secretly a secret cabal of sorceresses. Michael has his whole work on the female Illuminati that's mind blowing that no one is really doing. The fact that like these orders are all looked at as so hyper male, but that's like a front behind every great man is a female
Yeah.
a lot of the time. I mean, it's not 100% of the time, but these black nobility families do matrilineally pass on rulership and powers and stuff. The male side of the bloodlines are kind of more disjointed, but there's a female mother to mother transition, mitochondrial DNA
Mhm.
that goes straight line, and that's pretty weird.
They understand the concepts of this reality and creation, and women are the portals of creation. You can't create something without that. I mean, you can't without men either, but they understand. They understand where that power lies. You know, where it has to be um, impregnated from.
And since we've recapped this already, I'm not going to read that slide. Okay, here we go. Archons. We, before I showed the slide, I should have told about the archons, but in the concept of the Gnostic cosmology, he created, Yaldabaoth created archons to rule this realm. They're like weird insectoid squid monsters, whatever. I have a friend who says he saw them one time when he got out of the realm on a crazy DMT trip, and he made them tell him where we were, and they're like, okay, it's this giant egg and looks like this, and but so I mean, there could be something like that in like
Let's see.
the seas of consciousness to experience. So
I've
we're not
I've heard the
dismissing
same.
it entirely.
Yeah, because I've heard the same like beings when you get kind of outside, especially with DMT, and that they're like waykeepers. They're like there's 10 billion ways you can go. So which way do you want to go? I'll help you find the right like tube or whatever. You know, like that was more what it was
Yeah,
like when I heard about it.
and they were like my friend was talking about that they were scary, but as soon as he just like gave them a command, they just did whatever he wanted.
See, I think they
So
just fill a role, whatever that
and maybe
is.
that role is to look really scary so that someone that's controlled by fear can't get past them. Guardians of
Yeah,
the threshold, right? And
I
there's a
like
lot
that.
of occultism about that too. But now let's root in some reality that we can all experience because not all of us have busted out of the
Yeah.
realm and seen the squid Cthulhu monsters. Archon in Greek, they were chief magistrates chosen from the illustrious families, illustrious, illuminous, Illuminati. To superintend civil and religious concerns, they were 9 in number.
They're always 9.
Council of 9, much?
Yeah.
I don't know. Could
Why?
be there's 9 archons right now that are behind the scenes of these cabals. Could be, but they'd be human in
Yes.
my take. At least this word means humans.
Yes.
These
Rulers.
human rulers.
Right. That's why
So
anarchy is without rulers. Arc is rule. Yeah, that's definitely if they're maybe they're even like enhanced humans with like whatever technologies or magical or whatever
demon possession,
demon
whatever.
possession, right? But they're still human.
Now that would be wild if this 9 archons, 9 humans of the innermost Illuminati had some kind of demonic aspect to themselves that they were just implanting a certain spirit or consciousness in a different body when necessary, and
That would
they
make more
could just
sense to
shape
me.
shift.
Yeah, than that there's some sort of like other I don't know type of
But
being. Like
the point is, though,
yeah,
I just want to root it in reality that like we're talking about men here, men and women. Men
right,
means women too, by the way.
right.
Just like horse means mare and stallion.
Yes.
I get in trouble for saying men as if
Well, it's not your
I'm leaving
fault.
somebody out.
It's not your fault that people are ignorant.
This picture on the right is from the Halo series, by the way. Forerunners, if anyone plays Halo, is curious about that. All right, Demiurge, also Greek, a public servant
Huh.
and work. What? In the mythology of Eastern philosophers, an aeon employed in the creation of the world, but it also means a subordinate workman.
Wow.
That changes things quite a bit.
And it's making me think of how they're always, doing this whole thing like, well, God chose me to rule and that's why I am your king and like this whole like
Public
selected by
servant.
God thing, but they're always trying to make it more like mystical and magical and like godlike than it actually is, and they've like even taken these words that probably were used commonly to describe them and made them into this like, oh no, this is like a really big deal, it's a demiurge and it's an archon, instead of just like, oh yeah, so it's just like a guy. You know, or like building all this like meaning into it that was never there.
One thing that I'm intending to do soon is get to the bottom of this eastern side of where it came from.
Yeah.
Because I've been pulling at strings and finding some weird stuff, like
Cool.
Taoism, for example, which I think is like as cool as Hermeticism, similar roots in my opinion. I think the I Ching, there's nothing that isn't rooted in reality about the I Ching.
Yeah.
It's a great description of reality
Very
at all
practical.
times. And yeah, rooted in reality, but it was replaced with a weird, I mean, Confucianism happened, which I like to call Confucianism. Confucianism was like the follow-up to Taoism, which was more animistic, more natural. And when you look into Confucianism, it's pretty much communism.
It's basically
Old world communism.
family and community and society is like the highest good, and
Sacrifice yourself to the collective for the collective. Yeah, that
good
kind of thing.
point.
And one thing that came out of almost like a weird corrupt fusion of Confucianism and Taoism, something I only found out about recently, I couldn't believe it. In China, it's called legalism, legalism.
Yeah, you shared that somewhere, and that was my first time.
I think on Telegram.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. People should go join Telegram if they haven't yet, by the way.
So people, this is too big of a tangent to get into, but people that are hip to what goes on with the legal black magic on this side of the ocean, well, look up legalism in ancient China, and you'll see exactly where something from the East has come on over to here that was like really gross and corrupt, because it is exactly what you would think legalism means, but it's from back then. Hopefully you didn't hear that too bad. There's a dog playing with another dog out there, apparently.
That's okay.
They know they need to be quiet, but
yeah. There's someone in the chat pointed out that Tolkien has the 9 rings for mortal men. Lindsay Smith was saying, which goes back to that nine rulers, 9 rings.
Badass. Yeah, exactly.
Nice
and then what did they become? Creepy wraiths,
yeah,
right?
Wraiths. Creepy
All
archons.
serving one demiurge, Sauron. The big eye of Sauron.
The eye with
Yeah,
the
there's so
rings.
much. Yeah, man, Tolkien was on to something.
He nailed it.
No doubt. Yeah, I love everything Tolkien. I've done some big Tolkien episodes. If anyone wants to go get into my archives, just look on my website on the search bar, Lord of the Rings, or go to my Rockfin. They're pretty recent uploads. I grabbed some 2020 Lord of the Rings shows and put them up, and I did one earlier in 2021. Really good stuff with the Jungian archetype look at stuff in Lord of the Rings. Really awesome.
Cool.
Okay, so one of the words attributed to these emanations is aeon, which is Greek for age or duration.
Yes, and I use it that way, and then people think I'm talking about Gnostic aeons. I'm like, no, I'm talking about time.
Well, that's because people are poisoned with Platonism.
Yeah.
Platonism. Yeah, the Platonic philosophy, which is super Gnostic, believe it or not. Not that Plato has nothing good to say,
Right.
please. And when I say that, like, I kind of mock Gnosticism. I can't help it because I just think it's so silly.
Yeah.
But it's not like there's nothing good in there. Please
It's
don't
like,
get me wrong.
Yeah, it's like anything. We're trying to unwrap all of the parts that are misleading and maybe would trap some people's minds and whatever, and free ourselves and whoever happens to be coming along with us. That doesn't mean we haven't found any gems or like symbolism that's important, or things that reflect
So
our
true.
psyche. That can be found in any religion as much as I would mock any of them.
So true. I mean, exactly. These ideas that became Mysteria had to have maybe been corruptions on something better. But
Yeah.
one of the interesting things Reich gets into in Ether, God, and Devil is how systems of thought they get replaced by a following system of thought. But the problem with the follow-up system of thought is it was still built out of the same parts as the one that was wrong.
Yeah.
And all they could do is kind of shift around chairs on the Titanic, if you will. Like, to really see, you got to get completely outside of the systems of thought and then build a system of thought. And it needs to be rooted in reality at all times. So, and then you may actually find some archons or a demiurge, who knows? But show me when you do.
Yeah.
That aren't humans. But anyway, in Platonic philosophy, aeons are virtues, attributes, or perfections. The Platonists represented the deity as an assemblage of eons. The Gnostics considered aeons as certain substantial powers or divine natures emanating from the supreme deity and performing various parts in the operation of the universe.
See, I can
This
see.
is actually pretty great.
Yeah.
But it's still not like rooted in something you can point to. I mean, it's not like a dogma that must be accepted. But look on the right, you have the Kabbalistic tree of life. And when you study this and understand the path, each of these spheres is also connected to paths in the tarot and in astrology. You're getting closer to being rooted in nature, because that's what astrology is really about. And also your body has this dynamic. So now this is actually pretty cool. And that's what these emanations are often seen as this tree of life.
And that is the aeon. The idea of the aeon originally is this period of time. Well, the great age or the great year is that 26,000 year cycle, which is, associated with a certain time period where the sun is rising on the east, in the summer or the spring solstice equinox rather, and which sign or which constellation is behind it or whatever. And that's that age. It stays there for 26,000 years and then it proceeds into the previous sign. And that's the precession of the equinoxes. Well, that makes sense then why you would say this aeon has a certain like flavor, a certain energy, or a certain whatever they're saying, substantial power or divine nature to it, because that's the energy that's coming from the deity, which is maybe like the whole universe, that all of this is contained with it, and then like coming down as emanation into our sphere of influence. That makes sense. And that is rooted in something you can sort of maybe not touch, but you experience it and you can notice it and you can measure it. You can observe
it's hard though, like yugas and ages, hard to know for sure, because we can only observe such a small amount of it in one lifetime.
Yeah.
So you need really good records that you can trust. And then it's still like secondhand is a record, but I'm not like against that, not against history. But yeah, that whole concept is as interesting and plausible as it is also like, don't even get tripped on that as a dogma.
That's a good
like
point, yeah.
We might even be totally wrong about that.
That's totally true.
There's guys like, man, I'm trying to think who it was. His name will pop back into my mind, is a sort of a cult historian of the 20th century. As soon as his name comes back into my mind, I'll tell you. But he was talking about how 3,000, 4,000 years ago, something happened and procession kicked off then, and it wasn't even a thing before that.
Whoa.
Yeah. So It's hard to know.
That would be wild. Yeah, this is why I love questions. I love mystery, and I love like that new idea even is like so valuable to me because I've never considered it before. I love considering things I have never considered before. It's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, just get out of the dogma box a little. Yeah. Not that I see you as really in that, but
no. But we all have some to some degree or another, and that's like the best thing we can do is figure out what they are and then question them.
Now, if you ever notice I'm leaving a slide up too long and we're just talking for a bit, you can remind me and I'll take it down. I'm trying to be an awesome driver here.
You are an awesome driver.
Okay, this is fun. I mean, I've covered this before, but with you, it's much different. Like not that the last time I covered this was by any means bad, but like we're getting into some different stuff. I've thought about new things. I mean, the Reich element is newer to this presentation. Could maybe do slides on that, but this connects to so many things. Like what we're doing is a very high level overview, just simplifying a lot of concepts. And we're going to breeze through a lot. So I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Here's some images from Assassin's Creed again. Aliens or gods? How about a little bit of both? I'm going to explain that. I just wanted to show how this game series in particular, but video games, for anyone that's not aware, they're just like a treasure trove of old mythology being sort of revamped and reimagined and used as supposedly an original story.
Yeah.
I'm not against that even entirely, but let's see, next slide. All right, so here's a great definition. This is why we're getting there. Aliens or gods? Let me back up before I go to this next slide. I want to talk a little bit about Genesis real quick, which you may be aware of this. We may even have talked about this, but there's two stories of creation in Genesis, of creation of humans. Jehovah, which means the Tao, simplest terms. It's a process, the eternal beingness of nature, the life force energy in perpetual self-existence. Jehovah, not like a bearded Zeus guy, although it's depicted that way. That thing, nature itself, creates man. And then later, the Elohim create Adam. This seems very odd to me because in Sunday school, they told you God created Adam and that was that.
That was the end of it, yeah.
But when you translate the word that was used as God in the English KJV, the first time around you get Jehovah, and the second time, the second creation, you get Elohim. Who are these Elohim? We're going to get there, okay? Because Elohim is taken to mean the same thing as like Anunnaki. There are cultures from around the whole realm, native indigenous cultures even. They got words that sound very like Anunnaki or Elohim, and they mean something similar, or at least that's the lore we get. But who's giving us this lore? Weren't these people wiped out, conquered, languages demolished, and then now you learn in some like historian's textbook what their lore was? Did you go talk to them? I didn't. But anyway, that's a digression. I think that this stuff gets seeded into places after little reset cycles. I think resets happen all the time in one region, then another region, this people gets reset, and then these people get reset. I think right now we're seeing the Great Reset, which is an attempt to pull off like a worldwide one all at once.
Just beginning, yeah.
Yeah, they had to do a lot of little mini resets first. So, okay, we're going to look at the word God now. Very important, because that's what Elohim is taken to mean. God, plural, gods. What does God mean? Next slide, okay. So there's the first definition, Jehovah, the eternal and infinite spirit, the creator and sovereign of the universe. 2, a false god, a heathen deity, an idol. Interesting. 3, a prince, a ruler, a magistrate, or judge.
More people.
Human beings. Yeah, or an angel. Interesting. Angel, angle. That's very sky clock related word.
Yeah.
So what's important here is that back in the day, when you went to court, you didn't plead to the judge, you prayed to the God. Huh. It's only now in modern, like I'm not even kidding, that was the terminology used. You would pray to the God when you're in their court. Wow. And that's still how these fuckers see themselves a lot of the time, even if they don't like say I am God, but like they do act that way in these systems. I mean, nothing's really changed. Yeah. That's why I love this image I just found for the left here.
That's great.
So Elohim, being that means gods, we could just as easily be talking about princes, rulers, magistrates, or judges. Even when we get into these concepts of like Elohim or Anunnaki genetically modifying human beings to make them a more servile race or whatever. Well, what's happening right now? That exact thing. And who's doing it? Men are doing it to men.
Yeah.
So I don't need there to be, I mean, maybe there is a supernatural agency, but like even that word, when you break it down, supra means above or beyond. So can there be anything above and beyond the supreme being? Being is not a noun, by the way. The supreme being. Yeah. It's a verb. It's being. It is what it is. I am what I am. And that's it. Can you really be beyond? Is there anything beyond? If you strip down everything about yourself, all identity, all belief, all perception, and all that was left was the feeling that you exist. I am. Can you go beyond that? I don't think there's anything supernatural by definition of what supernatural means. There's just not perceived or not understood nature, occulted nature. But it is not above or beyond. Anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's absolutely.
So Elohim back then could have been us fucking with us.
Yeah.
The rulers fucking with the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
That's my take. I mean, this is a way of rooting it in reality.
Yeah. It makes more sense than anything else. You know, like
because we see it happening now.
Yeah. And then like 1,000 years from now, hundreds of years from now, tens of years from now, are they going to be like, yeah, there was this crazy stuff, and then they, whatever's happened, whatever's about to happen, they're going to tell crazy stories about it and pretend like it was supernatural, and we're going to be sitting here being like, no, I swear to God, it was these motherfuckers who are on the screen right now.
Look at that monster on the far right.
Seriously, how do you end up looking like that if you're not an evil demonic, like, ugh, look at them both.
Looks like Skeletor.
Who likes these people?
Somebody ran out of adrenochrome and he recently died.
Yeah. Or he was like, oh, my new body is finally perfected, and like transferred over somehow.
By the way, that guy on the right, he has a bombshell quote from back in the day. When I die, I would like to be reincarnated as a deadly virus so that I can do something to help with overpopulation.
Piece of shit.
He said that.
Yeah.
I hope you reincarnated as something as low and vile as a little piece of bacteria.
That'd be rad.
Nasty worm. Anyway, I don't have a lot of love for that.
No.
All right, this is just for fun. I just wanted to remind everyone that, like, even your current gods, I mean archons, I mean presidents, who knows what's going on with these guys? Like this guy on the left and on the right, I see a lot of differences here. But the main one that I like to show is 2021 Biden has a connected earlobe to his face, and 2012 Biden, his earlobe is disconnected.
Yeah.
Does this really look like the same guy to you?
No. I've seen that earlobe thing before too, and I don't know, is it like a body double? Is it his clone, like, gone wrong? Is it just like...
Body double is a really simple explanation.
Yeah.
That has been, we've known that rulers have done that forever.
Right.
So, but who knows? Clones too. I mean,
but then why is his body double so bad at acting? You know, like, come on.
Maybe it's just hard enough to get someone that looks kind of like Sloppy Joe, and to also be a good actor was too much.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, and we know they have cloning technology. We've had cloning technology since like the early 1900s. I don't know. People don't realize that they used to clone embryos by using literally a human hair to slice it in half, and that's a clone now. So
wasn't that on your show with Freeman where he brought up the clones, the first human clones, and their names were like
these
Lulu and something, and
not
Nana and Lulu.
First human clones, as in the first that have been recreated from genetic material and not split embryo. But yeah, they're Lulu and Inanna, and it's the story of the creating basically mindless human slaves who can't have spiritual abilities or, you know, full cognizance.
So the Gnostic story in a nutshell.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah. Oddly enough, we get that. That episode you did with Freeman was totally lit. Okay, let me move to the next slide before I bring him back up. Okay, so here's a fun slide. We were talking about how, like, the crazy left wants to build the world in their image. So we, you know, that guy we just saw on the previous slide, he's promising utopia, essentially, if we can just hold on long enough and do enough contact tracing and wear masks long enough.
And just get rid of all the cops, but then, like, give me a bunch of bodyguards and put fences around my little castle and...
Don't mind me giving $25 million to Palestine, and then 3 days later they're shooting rockets at Israel, so Israel has an excuse to crack down on them harder.
Yeah.
And you know, don't mind the man behind the curtain.
None of this is happening. Just keep eating pork.
This is my own words here, but utopia means no place etymologically.
Wow.
Good to know. The word utopia means no place.
No place.
Whether through religious dogma, governmental promises, or New Age ascension cults, the promise of a realer than real reality to come, or a perfect society, is always just around the corner. Nature waits patiently for our realization that we never left reality. We only simulated, hypocrisy, an artificial world of words, symbols, and mysteria concocted from our own internal dissonance.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what we were describing at the beginning too, right? Like Earth and nature, like they're just waiting. They're just like, come back, come home. And we're like, la, la, la.
Please notice me. Here's synchronicity. I'm trying to draw you here. And then, you know, no place is interesting when you get into legalism, because it's the noun that controls everything. For a rulership, for a dominion there's required a place to be there. And what is a place? It's like an artificially delineated patch of land with a fence around it, or a border, or whatever. There's no places in nature. So if we want utopia, we have to get to no place, which means we're just here in nature, and we're not a noun anymore. We're not we can have descriptive words. But the native cultures in this continent, as far as I know, didn't even have nouns. Like they called themselves stuff like runs like a wolf or something. And
Yeah.
that, I mean, maybe
So
they have a
terrible.
descriptive word that's sort of a noun, but like even what they called animals had something to do with describing what they did.
Yeah.
And then when we translate their names back to our language, then we still use a noun in some sense. But I wouldn't know for sure. But I do know that when you call yourself something like Dances with Wolves, like Kevin Costner, that you're describing an action, not
Yeah.
like a hypothetical concept.
Every native person I've known with their traditional names intact had exactly that, like verb names, like swims under or goes beneath or yeah.
I think that's so cool.
I'm gonna thank.
I used to call myself on Facebook Chance Being Thunder way before I knew any of this stuff. And then Facebook was like, you're not allowed to have a nickname anymore.
You can't have fun, your real name. Slave. Shut up and sit down. I just want to.
I didn't even know about being and Jehovah and all that back then. I just intuitively was like, I should be Chance Being Thunder.
I love
and
it.
I don't think it's appropriation of anybody or anything. I was just trying to describe how I felt, like the light and the flash and the sound and the fury. And I was so pumped, and I loved that name. People called me that for a while, but then that kind of went away because Facebook made me put my slave surname back up there.
Back on. I want to thank Tommy P in the chat who gave a $5 super chat. Thank you. Tommy P says some of my favorite podcasts are with the two of y'all together, so that's awesome to hear. Whoop, whoop. Yes, and feel free to keep the love coming in the form of tips and or super chats. I appreciate them both as always to keep Rogueways going.
Lindsay, are you up for like a long one?
Well, yeah.
I would love to get through all this. Are you able?
Yeah, let's do it.
Like we might hit closer to 3 than 2. Just a fair. I looked at the time just now and I was like,
you're like barely in there yet.
Because it is so fun to talk about this with you. It's, I could just breeze through this and present it all, but like there's nuance here and it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going. See. And if we run out of steam, we'll do a part 2 sometime soon. How about that?
Cool. Okay. So what's important, the next step we're going to take here is that this Gnostic ideology that hopefully people see how it's permeated into Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, the 9, even really the whole 9, even that phrase. It's everywhere. There's seeds of this everywhere, that the world is artificial or illusion, in some way a prison or a cage that needs to be transcended or ascended out of, as if we weren't already in utopia as soon as we'd realize we're not in a place to begin with, because this realm, this being that we're a part of, this being, this mother, this womb, matrix means womb, it's all here. It's totally lit. It's awesome. It's not a prison.
Yeah.
You can't convince me.
I know.
So
I agree.
So we've got right now in the world a whole new resurgence of this, and this thing's perennial. This Gnostic meme is perennial. It just keeps, you hack it off and it pops back up, roots sticking around.
Yeah.
Simulation theory is the new flavor of the day.
I'm just gonna say Gary Wayne talks about this and he calls it Legominism, which is this exactly what you're describing, how this exact set of mythologies and ideas keeps cropping up in like fairy tales and movies and books and myths and all, and every tradition all around the world over and over and over again. It's not an accident.
Yeah, it's a reflection of the dissonance of our internal state.
I love it.
The internal fracturing. I think that's why Tessarion puts the beginning of this on the ego's birthday.
I love that.
And now at this point, ego is a tool we're using and we need, but we don't need to like demonize the ego, but we do need to heal it. Now, simulation theory, this is in my opinion, I don't even see how it's an opinion. It's the materialist version of Gnosticism. You're in a computer, something programmed it, you're trapped in it, escape the matrix, whatever. And materialism, as we know, is just an ever deepening emotional plague and scourge upon the realm, as this picture shows.
Yeah.
We'll continue forward though. This guy, Elon Musk, El being a name for Saturn, also previously named for the sun. On is the god they worshipped at Heliopolis, the sun god. Musk. What do you do with Musk? It kind of covers or obscures something.
And it clings to it.
Clings to it. So This guy's Musk is all over our sun god or something. Anyway, he says either we're going to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality or civilization will cease to exist. Those are the two options.
He could go fuck himself. Why would those
You
be
hate
the
this
only
guy.
two options? That's the hugest logical fallacy ever. There's never only two options, and anyone who does that to you is trying to manipulate you. I always talk about this. I did it in school as a teacher all the time. I'm like, listen, you can either step out into the hall or you can start behaving appropriately or whatever bullshit. And they always fall for it, but it's a manipulation. They obviously have like 82 million other choices than those two.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like a threat for sure. You know, and this is the guy who's cool. He smokes weed with Joe Rogan. He's getting stoned and thinking deep thoughts. So maybe he's right. Maybe we're in a simulation, man. But when you look at this dude's face and into his eyes, all I see is horrific pain, personally. We don't have to get on Elon Musk tangent, but I've used the images in the background here because it's years old. But here's Will Smith playing Neo in the Matrix with deep fake technology that you can do on your home computer and just replace somebody in a film with somebody else. And years ago, it looked this good. Just Google that, Will Smith in the Matrix, and you'll be able to watch the whole movie with him.
Wow.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Also, here's another zinger for you people out there. Type into your browser sometime or like in a new tab, thispersondoesnotexist.com, and just go there and hit refresh a few times.
It's creepy.
Report back.
Yeah. You can now, I think they now have like this car doesn't exist, this animal doesn't exist. Like they have all kinds of them now, but it is super, super weird. But every single one of them, I swear, you can tell. You can look at it and you're just like, like something's not right about this. You know, you can feel
one
it,
thing
even
Elon's saying the truth about is they do desire to create simulations indistinguishable from reality.
Yes, that is true. And maybe if they don't get their way, then they'll destroy civilization. Who knows? You know, maybe.
Or their version of what is civilization. Because do we really want to be civil? Do we really want to be civilians? Do we really want citizenships? Are those the vessels we want to pour our spiritual energy and attention into?
Good point.
Do we want to be slaves to a municipal corporation as we are currently treated? I don't know. Maybe civilization isn't so great. Doesn't it just mean like keeping nature at bay? In a sense, can we not be more evolved than that? And I don't know, just words, people. These are words. People get lost in the word. The word becomes their reality. Civilization's a perfect example, as if like it's the pinnacle, our current reality of all the efforts of humanity up to now. And here we are in this peak moment of progression. Civilization.
It really leads into that delusion that there's never been anything better or that we can do better than what nature has already done. Both.
And also, I'm not saying go back to living in teepees and huts.
Unless you want to.
Unless you want to, sure. But let's be real about what we're doing. Anyway, here we go. Another zinger from Michael here. The Mysterium runs in a similar way to a computer program. One almost impossible to turn off, uninstall, or delete. Man's world certainly affects his mind, and his mind affects the world in which he lives. The world changes because of thinking. However, if a man's thinking is Mysteria possessed, the world is certain to take on an abhorrent complexion, as it has done.
Because it's a delusion.
And then it feels like it's fake. Feels like you're in a simulation. Feels like you're in an illusion. Because you are, but it's in here. You know, that's the waking up from the Matrix.
Free your mind.
Now we're going to get into, now that we've laid a lot of this groundwork, we're going to get into some video game examples of Gnostic ideas. And the reason why I think it's so important to look at how this is creeped into video games, and we're only going to look at a few because it's everywhere, is because this is the type of media that's shaping people's belief systems now more than ever. Bigger budgets than Hollywood.
Very immersive.
Hell, this game right here, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they put a chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza that the player could find and jump into. And it was like a hidden chamber. A few weeks later, it comes out through like some sort of new radar that they're using on the pyramid that, oh, the chamber from Assassin's Creed Odyssey actually is really there.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
What is that? I don't know.
Trying to program you that you can like create reality through this or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's weird. And I played this game for something like 130 hours or something ridiculous. So
it's kind of awesome, actually.
I love this game. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of awesome, but like it's also telling you, especially by the time you get to Valhalla, the newest one, they're just straight up Gnostic about it. But the guys that you're fighting, the evil cult that's like running everything that you have to assassinate, they're the Gnostics.
Yeah.
They're the ones believing Yaldabaoth is the demiurge, but they serve him. He's their grand architect. They know what he is, but they serve him because there's power in that.
Yeah.
Sounds like a certain organization I could think of with a big G in the middle of their logo.
Yeah, plus you get to climb pyramids, and I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Plus, Final Fantasy shows up in that game, and that's wild.
Yeah, that was a weird crossover. I remember that. Got a chocobo in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
More crossover. Yeah. But here's a great slide. Distraction, Simulacra. Super Mario World, pretty harmless. I think games are benign as a concept, personally. I don't want to be clear about that. I love games. But you got to know you got to pay attention to what you're taking in. Are you, critically thinking about it? Are you just accepting it? And they also can be a distraction. I spent way too many years of my life on World of Warcraft, and we're going to get into that game.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to show how 30 years has changed what comes across on the screen, because it does echo Elon's statement from before. Yeah. And on the right, in this game, Cyberpunk 2077, where the Darketype tarots that we looked at came from, could be a whole presentation on that game alone. Really wild game, really Gnostic game. We'll talk about it some, but only like a few elements. I can barely scratch the surface of this stuff without giving a whole show to just one thing. But that's Keanu Reeves. He plays a character in Cyberpunk who is an engram, they call it, a digital ghost in the machine, like someone's mind that got ripped out of their body and simulated in a computer to live eternally as a prisoner. And it's Keanu. So like, does he have some sort of deal where anytime there's something kind of like the Matrix that they really want to program society with, that he's got to go do it? Or did this studio just think, man, Keanu would be the shit for this role, and they picked him? It could go either way. I mean, not everything has to be a deep conspiracy.
True.
But I don't know.
This is why I don't want to do virtual reality, and why, like, you're already so immersed, and then you get even more immersed, and I don't know. I just think it's something to stay away from, and at least think very deeply before you go into it. Your mind has a really hard time distinguishing already. Back in Super Mario, that first one in 1990, I had a hard time distinguishing. This one now, it's like even harder. In virtual reality, I don't know how you...
Not to mention what we know about simple virtual reality interfaces like Facebook. What that is... I'm at the point where I know that when I'm on Facebook, I'm feeling something pulling me towards aggression.
Yeah.
I'm at the point where I can definitely tell.
Yep.
And I really avoid it. I don't even hardly respond to nice comments even. I just don't want to get in there. It just hurts. But
come to locals. All the happy people are there. But I also want to point out that I'm never going to subscribe, because it is an aspect of the Mysterium, that this idea that you can transfer your consciousness into an advanced enough structure like a computer or chip or whatever, and that you can then like be stuck there or even live there forever as a fun, good thing. I don't subscribe to that at all. We've been given no evidence of it, but it's pushed constantly in all of these films and all of these books and all of these games that is something that is not only possible, but like inevitable. And that you should be like glad about it, and you can't wait because you're going to be immortal in this like system. And again, like that, the question we asked at the beginning, where's your mind? Where's your soul? Can your soul and your mind get trapped into a little system like that? Like, I don't support that ideology.
Cyberpunk really asks that question of the player. Is this even you anymore? If you do this, it's a path you can take in that game. Actually, that's a way that it could end potentially, or you could stay in meat space. But what you're saying is a perfect description is basically what that idea entails, is like that now you're going to be the demiurge in this artificial reality that you're the god of, right?
Right.
So that's exactly what Michael's talking about, like a computer program, Mysterium. What's in here, Mysterium, then starts to influence what you're creating in the world. And so this Mysteria-ridden, these weird Silicon Valley freak shows, they just are trying really hard to manifest what they believe in, just like what we do. But, they're possessed by something of a different, we could talk about that. Like, what is the AI? What is this? What is this energy? Is their consciousness artificial consciousness when energy is looped through the circuitry of a closed system? That's deep stuff. We talked about that a little bit with Mitch. I bet you'll talk about that with Mitch, the orgone donor.
That's one of my favorite subjects. I really think that demons in general are like this consciousness that has cut itself off from the source of basically nature, and by whatever methodology they have ended up in that situation, and that's part of why they feed on humans and consciousness and emotions, because it's free energy that they can't get anywhere else. They're no longer self-sustaining beings. They're like out of the loop of energy creation and life affirmation, and so they have to like steal it. And I think that that's what, if AI exists and if consciousness is going to be in these things, it's going to be, as far as I'm concerned, that type of a thing, because I don't think a soul that had another option, which I think other souls do have a choice, would choose something so restrictive and, I guess, like unnatural and not life affirming, not hooked into the automatic, natural systems of energy.
Okay, so let's rush forward here. I love everything you just said, but like if we pause to just go down every tunnel, we won't cover this, which is fun. This is the stuff that's fun for people that like these games or grew up on them. Final Fantasy VII, perfect example. One of the biggest games ever. When I was a kid, before I even had a PlayStation, at Latchkey after school with the other kids whose parents worked till 5, we'd run around and pretend to be characters from this game and look at the strategy guide, and we had no idea what the real story was. We just knew what the characters looked like and what their name was, and we just played pretend with this. Very influential on a kid's mind, this symbolism that they don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest Gnostic allegories you could ever find. Almost like Jewish mysticism, the game, if you will.
Yeah.
So we'll get into some of the elements of why that is. But first, I want to just talk more about what I was describing, how this nostalgia hook is super deep, because this game just got remade and came out in 2020. Interesting.
And then I made it, or bought it and played it right away. So I had to.
Yeah, same here. And it's really weird how meta it is. It's almost like the game is commenting on the Mandela effect or something. Mandela effect. Because when you get to the end of the game, things start getting dramatically different. And it's almost like the characters are aware that they're in a time, they're doing things differently than their original destiny. Like they're literally, the story has something to do with like breaking destiny, breaking fate, fighting fate. Very interesting. Like I like it. I like the game actually, but there's also some things that if you're not aware when you're playing it, like what are you taking into your worldview? There's some, studio head decisions that came into this story that didn't previously matter to the original incarnation. We'll get to that, but here's a fun Vice article. When fandom goes wrong, the dark tale of the Final Fantasy VII house. If you want, I'm going to try to go quickly through this. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to tell you what happened here.
Okay.
You can find this article on Vice though with that title. Basically, a young woman named Joanna formed in 2002. Sorry, odd mirroring of 2020, actually. When she was 20 years old, she formed what became known as the Final Fantasy VII house, where basically her and a bunch of other like internet recluses all became roommates in this home. And she sort of became this cult leader where she told them about their past lives. She had like multiple personalities that she pretended, or I guess really had. She was trying to convince them of magic and her magical powers. And it's a really messed up cult. People got badly abused. But one of the things that she was doing to these young adults was essentially she convinced them that they were not reincarnation, I guess, but the human incarnation of fictional characters from Final Fantasy VII. And then she'd be like, well, these two, just like the weird fan fiction, we'll get into like be all focused on like the relationship between two characters that from a story. Like I've seen this kind of thing online for years. She was just like, okay, you're this character and you're this character. Now kith each other. And, very abusive, controlling behavior. She claimed that she came from a secret government program where she was like trained in the desert, Like, who knows? Maybe there was some weird SRA stuff with this woman and they sent her out to the world and they're like, go fuck shit up.
Yeah.
I think very possibly.
Very possible.
I just wanted to show how the nostalgia, especially in sort of misfit love like people, is really powerful for a game like this. You know, some people that are older or never got into games, they don't know how seriously this is important to somebody
And
that spent years and years of their life playing this game over and over again, and it's like 100-hour long game. And
at the developmental part of their life too. You know, we were young, we were kids.
I was a second grader
Wow.
when this game came out.
Yeah, that makes sense because I was like 12 or whatever. 15,
Yeah.
Something.
And then I did play it repeatedly. I got a PlayStation so I could play this game, and it took a long time. Like, it had been out a long time when I finally got a PlayStation. And anyway, I love the original game. Don't get me wrong. It's pretty cool. We're going to get more into some of the symbolism in it that's weird, but here's another. Oh boy. This just is a microcosm of the whole thing. Here's the headline here. Final Fantasy VII player gives life meaning by hitting level 99 before the first boss.
God, how long would that take? That's ridiculous.
Well, I'll just read it to you, the highlights here. Two things. I'm going to read this article because I think it's important to see the worldview that is in these people's heads that write the article and that they're interviewing. Okay, so I'll go through this quickly.
Okay.
Two things in the world can make life meaningful. Having the strength to forge your own destiny, to live by your own rules and not be swayed by the whims and wishes of others, and really sticking it to some stranger on the internet. When Twitch streamer Circle Master spent 2 years grinding through Final Fantasy VII to get Cloud and Barret to level 99 before even facing the first boss, he achieved both. This incredibly mind-numbing, boring feat was carried out in order to spite a single individual, an unknown user on a private forum named Dick Tree. In 2012, Dick Tree had claimed he would be able to hit level 99 in FF7 without leaving the first level, or the first area. But at some point, Dick Tree stopped charting his progress, and Circle Master decided to take up the task for himself 3 years later to express, he says, my hatred and disdain for Dick Tree. So out of spite, he decided to spend 500 hours walking around in circles on the same screen of the first area in the game, grinding through the same type of enemy battle over and over again. And the way the game works is it's random encounter style, which means you just walk across the screen and maybe it takes 5 seconds, maybe it takes a minute. A fight will just pop up. And it's the same level 1 enemies. If you know anything about video games, if you want to get to higher levels, you have to fight enemies that are higher levels. Yeah. So it took him 5 years or 500 hours, I think it says. He couldn't even turn off the PlayStation 1 because there's no save point. It'll leave the damn console on the whole time. Some people, I'm going to keep reading. Some people have pointed out what a tremendous, tremendous waste of time this is. Others have applauded it for being so quintessentially human. To pile hundreds of hours into a task simply to show you can. Circle Master, though, has his own response and explained why he kept on grinding in a post on a private forum. All right, this is key. This is the mindset that is prevalent all around. This is the materialist, simulation theory, atheist, Gnostic thing. This is the emotional plague. Here we go. From this guy, he says, life does not have inherent meaning. To say that our lives are pointless and our achievements meaningless is to state the obvious. No matter how grand our achievements or how broad their scope, time turns all to dust and death destroys all memory. But that does not mean we cannot ascribe our own meaning to what we do. It is because nothing has meaning unto itself that we are free to create meaning, to make metaphor, and in doing so, reflect on ourselves and our world.
Okay, Nietzsche. That's
it's so nihilist.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also like, you can't the thing about this level of nihilism is you can't say, hey man, you're wrong. This is his world.
Yeah.
You know? And for me, I think meaning is everywhere. I do think we make meaning. We're meaning making creatures.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But have some fucking standards.
Yeah. And oh my God, he just did
just
my
depressing.
version of hell. I would rather die. The reading of that made me want to kill myself when I thought about being him. I was like, nope, no.
Yeah, his meaning was just to spite some guy.
That's insanity.
He's been forever doing this. It's so weird.
Whew.
Anyway, try not to judge this guy. It's his life to do what he wants, but this exists out there in the world, and I want people to know this is a thing.
Yeah, this is how
this is
to
a thing, and this is video game culture, and this is nerd culture. it's not everyone that plays games, but like there's some basement dwellers living at their folks' house to this day trying to like one up this guy in some way.
Yeah. Well,
It
it's like
exists.
the psychological impact that these stories have on people too, is exactly the point. Like that's just a game. I don't know. Like this got so deep into your psyche, and then whatever form you were in, and this dick tree guy is clearly like troll level 5,000. He's like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not. But watch you do it, asshole. That sucks.
It's brutal, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's just a brutal achievement. I mean, damn.
that's really sad.
Now let's drop into some of the symbolism in FF7. Thanks for letting me go so long tonight.
I love it. This is fun.
It's my favorite stuff to talk about. Okay. Quick little synopsis of what's going on in this game. This is the logo in the bottom left. It's a meteor. Tessarion has a lot of amazing work about comet symbolism relating to goddess cults. The tail of the comet is the hair of the goddess. It's a whole story, but oddly enough, this game verifies that particular assumption that Tessarion has made, because in the lore, the history of this world of Final Fantasy VII that the game takes place in, and everyone should know, I didn't mention this, but Final Fantasy games are not related from one game to the other.
Yeah.
So even though it's 7, it's the 7th game, it is its own standalone world and story and all that. They share some common themes and like
Spiky hair.
some common, yeah, like the way that magic works or whatever, like might be similar, but it's its own world. And anyway, in the ancient past, there was like a civilization on the planet, which was called Gaia, that had balance with nature, and they were called the Cetra, I believe. I know a lot about this lore.
Yeah, I think it's the second.
And a meteor hits, and on this meteor is an alien creature that is a female, and it basically wipes out the original people. Not the meteor itself, but then the creature that came off the meteor. So there is already like a dark goddess thing going on
And then her child.
with the meteor, with the comet. So Michael's onto something, or that's a wild coincidence, but I like to trust Michael's research generally. I mean, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but his research is pretty solid. At the very least, he can tell you what people have said in the past because he's so well read and so well sourced. So let's go to the next one. All right. So the alien creature was called Genova. Does that sound like anything? Jehovah. And
it's a female too.
And it's a female too. So here's our evil Sophia creature, okay? Now, the main villain of the game is not Genova, because she's been dead for a long time, or she's on ice, whatever. And the evil corporation in this game world is using literally a hybrid program, using Genova's alien DNA, God DNA, Anunnaki DNA, to create super soldiers like this guy who's the main villain named Sephiroth.
Sephiroth is what I think it is.
And even he's very like androgyne, feminine.
Super.
Oddly enough.
And
so
terrifying.
Sephiroth is the name of these emanations or aeons from the Kabbalistic tree of life. Each one of these spheres is called a Sephiroth.
The first time I heard Sephiroth in real life, I was like, wait, Sephiroth? Like, I was so confused. I was like, how is Sephiroth a thing from an ancient? Oh.
Exactly. This game, for me, way preceded any of my knowledge of occultism.
Yeah.
Way preceded.
And yet it's like the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, so here you have Demiurge, wannabe Sephiroth, and his mama, Sophia, Genova. There's really a similarity here. This is the goddess and her son.
Yeah.
This is it. It's a Gnostic deal.
It's the same story.
He's trying to like basically commandeer the realm for his mother, if you will.
Trappa Skunk in the chat just pointed out that Shinra literally means God's snare or trap.
How did he know that I had a slide coming with that?
Psychic.
So a little more here on the right is what Genova/Jehovah, the monstrous feminine, looks like in like a final form sense, very chthonic. Yeah. And Sephiroth becomes this Luciferian one-winged angel creature when you fight him in the final battle. Mm-hmm. Very Luciferian. we won't linger on that. There's so much to talk about here. Maybe I took that slide out about divine net or God snare, but he's right on the money. I'm glad he pointed that out.
Trappist God
And
covenant system.
Cloud, the spiky-haired main hero character, golden spiky hair, Cloud, solar hero, solar deity, Jesus, the Son of God.
Yeah.
Shinra Corporation is the main, like one of the main villain aspects of the game. They're using their technology to suck dry the life force energy of the planet, which they call Mako. And yeah, they have these big reactors and they're draining. It's just like an allegory for oil.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's important is because they're letting you know that oil is actually life force energy of the world. It's not just like smashed up dinosaurs that turned into, it's blood.
That's the first time I heard that oil was not abiotic. I was thinking of Final Fantasy VII. I was like, oh, it's like Mako.
Yeah, I mean, what does blood do? It circulates life force energy.
Yeah.
Oil could be like that for the planet. I can't claim to know, but I feel like considering everything that's being done to the planet is like a fractal of parasitic vampirism, then it's probably blood.
Yeah.
It's probably blood in some sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it even kind of reminds you of blood when oil comes out. I don't know. I don't know. It can even have like reddish look to it.
I even sometimes wonder if we're like what the Earth created to try and we're like the helper T cells to try and like prevent this thing from winning or whatever. You know, we're supposed to identify the virus, or so to speak, and like mount a defense, gather the right information about it so that a defense can be mounted or something. And
the thing is like autoimmune humanity, if you will.
Yeah.
Like by messing us up with autoimmune diseases, it's also like, if we're the white blood cells for the realm, now we're attacking our own body, so to speak. Yeah. Very weird. Very weird.
Poor little Earth.
I gotta ditch this hat. Sorry about my hair. It's just not comfortable anymore.
We love you anyways.
Yeah. Whatever. We're gonna continue.
Your hair looks great. I used to make people tell me that my hair looked great every single show. So
I don't know what's going on. It's just an awkward time for me. Anyway.
You're on the road. It's hard.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, you're a badass for doing this, because I definitely probably wouldn't. I'd be like, no, my hair is like crazy and like I don't even know where I am.
I mean, you would have been cool to let me not do the show, but I really wanted to.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. It's awesome.
I was gonna do a fun one with Alan, our friend from Weaving Spiders, but I wasn't able to be in here for that, so it just didn't work out. But I wasn't gonna force it if it wasn't gonna flow, but this flows. It's fun. We'll continue. This is the main city of the game world, Midgar. Sounds very much like Midgard. Just to we're not going to get totally hung up on that slide for very long, but the main character, Cloud, is also from a town called Niflheim, more Norse mythology in there. Or Nibelheim, sorry. Sounds just like Niflheim, but it's Nibelheim. Yeah. He rides a motorcycle called Fenrir. Cloud does. Yeah.
I didn't know his motorcycle was named Fenrir.
Yeah, the wolf that kills Odin. One important aspect of this game, though, was that well before 2001, they had a literal 9/11 allegory, false flag, where the corporation destroys an entire section, Sector 7, and they blame it on the eco-terrorists that the player's group is. And they're called eco-terrorists, even though all they're trying to do is blow up these reactors because they're draining the blood of the planet and killing it. So there's this eco-terrorism thing, sort of making eco-terrorism look like it's cool. And then there's a false flag attack. There's so much to this game. We're barely going to scratch it. I'm sorry for that. I just want people to know how much is in here. Now, this one is really wild. Tifa is one of the main characters of the game. Here you see the remake version, and on the top right, there's just something quite different between those two images. And what I want to say about it is, even though these graphics were really chunky, bad 3D in 97 or 96, I think it's 97, as a little kid and a male, all my little friends, we were in love with this character, Tifa, And what is Tifa Ret? In Kabbalism, it's an Aeon, a Sephiroth, the emanation of beauty and masculinity. And Tifa's the beautiful feminine character, but she's also a hand-to-hand fighter, a pugilist, masculine fighter.
Yeah.
So, do you think they named her Tifa just randomly?
Not even a chance.
In the remake, she was going to be that busty, but the at this point PC culture wouldn't have it.
Wouldn't let it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, like they got warned.
We didn't get to see the jiggle physics on her.
Just didn't. I think there's some jiggle physics, but
Yeah.
that's hilarious. That's such a Japanese thing. The bottom left is just some people cosplaying two of these characters. Now, what I want to point out here is that the main character, Cloud, he's led by females the whole plot. He does not really make his own decisions or have a lot of his own will.
Yeah.
The females lead him. Now they're good females in this case, but I think that's also allegory. And there was like a small cross-dressing section that was just kind of a funny gag part of the game in the original.
Yeah.
And they made it a huge deal in the remake.
It was so awkward in the remake, and it was so like over the top and far beyond what it was in the previous. Like, it's very, very different. But again, it's that PC culture. They have to insert the narrative that they're trying to shove down our throats, just in case you forgot what you're supposed to love now.
Yeah. I'm here in Camirado now, like we said. I went to a restaurant today and we sat outside and it was fun. And I haven't worn a mask anywhere. It's been fine.
Ooh.
Been into stores and shit. Anyway, I went in to go to the restroom and both restrooms were all gender. That was the sign. And they all had multiple stalls.
No.
So, yeah, really. So presumably, you don't know. It's just 50-50. You might walk into one that's got some women in there. And you're supposed to use the bathroom alongside women as a man and be comfortable with that, because if you don't, you're going to make other people who are some gender other than male or female uncomfortable. It blew my mind. I was really like annoyed by that, because luckily I was the only one that went in the bathroom, but come on, this is ridiculous.
Well, I liked what you said too, because I think you posted that in Telegram too, and you were like, what? So I have to be uncomfortable now. I'm forced to be uncomfortable now for the off chance that someone else of a really, really, really tiny minority of the population might be uncomfortable choosing a bathroom to use, you know?
And it's like a graphic detail, but there's no urinal.
Yeah.
Like, because that's male privilege to be able to just stand when you pee and not have to go into a booth and close the door.
It's male biology. It's female
Exactly.
privilege to do anything that a female does, and it's male privilege to do anything a male does. So we don't even have to attach the word privilege. We could just say it's
not
male
allowed
or
anymore,
female.
though. It's male privilege, you know? Like, it's male privilege to stand up and pee. We got to make it an all-gender restroom.
We need to normalize female privilege as a phrase and start applying it to everything we can, just to undo the fallacy of privilege.
Look, privilege does exist. I mean, I'm privileged to have good parents. And
yeah.
there's different levels of it. Now we all have it in some way or another. And
Right.
like, what fighting over who's got the biggest victimhood is hilarious.
So stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. If it was individual stalls, I get it. I'm like, cool. I love individual stalls more than anything. This is awesome. Let's only do this, you know. But like that it's multiple stalls in one room and that you just get to like pick. I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that either.
So I'm going to break down another character from the game. The other female lead, Aerith, means flower in Hebrew. And she's a flower girl. She's got the only place in the whole city, this big mechanized transhuman, wet dream, technocracy, future, surveillance state. The only place in the whole that whole city where flowers grow is her. And it's an old church.
Yeah.
An old cathedral.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah,
I'm telling
like
you
a
something.
Tartaria mud flood energy gathering device.
They're telling you something. And Cloud falls through the roof and lands in her flower bed, and the flowers break his fall. Aerith is also a very near anagram for Earth. I thought that was interesting. She is the only survivor of this ancient pre-meteor humanity. The ancients, they're called the Cetra, those who could speak to the planet and communicate with it. And the important detail that what happens to her in the game is that she gets ritually sacrificed by Sephiroth when you're not expecting it.
Oh my god, it was traumatizing.
Who wasn't? Like, this actually affected people. Sounds silly, but when you're a little kid and you loved this character and what you knew about video games was that the heroes always win and find a way, and then all of a sudden one of your favorite characters just gets brutally shanked out of nowhere by a 12-foot long sword, and she's literally dead, and they bury her in the water, and she's gone forever. That's it. that's pretty harsh. Like no one that played that game as a kid or even as an adult doesn't remember that.
Yeah.
And sorry for the spoiler, people. This game's from the 90s.
Yeah, you gotta get over it.
It's just important that there is like this what was sacrificed? The one who could speak to the planet. That's what was gotten rid of. That's what the bad guy had to do. You know, I just think that's really important.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the last slide on Final Fantasy. The remake just made a lot to do with rose symbolism that was never there in the original because the graphics weren't good enough. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Maybe it's a coincidence.
Huh.
And the finger to the lips there with Tifa. Yeah. So, and where are we at? Okay, we can keep going.
Cool.
I mean, I'm good to keep going. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't like already 3 hours deep.
Yeah.
If you want, we're done with FF7. If there's like someone threw something out in the chat, I'm not watching it, or you want to make any more comments about it. There's so much in that game. We just scratched the surface.
Well, Trappeskunk again says in the remake behind the altar in the cathedral, there's a tree of life symbol. Wow, I didn't catch that. That's cool.
I missed that too. Thank you.
See,
wow,
so
they're not messing around.
Yeah.
They're really, it's littered with it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and the rose represents Mother Mary a lot as well. So I don't know if that is connecting with the feminine goddess, like rose line. Yeah.
Rose. Road can be a prefix indicating redness, but it also means the sea. Mary. It's all the same character.
Yeah.
The womb, the goddess. Yeah, that's good stuff to get into with Dylan's work. All the linguistic connections between the roads and the Marys. Yeah. Anyway, we won't pause on that, but really nice point by that guy in the chat, or girl, or other gender.
Guy.
Okay, so let's talk about Cyberpunk a little bit. Here's another monstrous feminine on the right. Cyberpunk 2077 is the transhuman future game. It's like the perfect depiction of what a total hell this idea would become. And it's really accurate in that sense. And I actually recommend people, if they can stomach it, check it out. Other than the fact that it's horribly buggy when it first came out and very bizarre that it seemed like they had to force it to come out in 2020. Like that was important for some reason because the game just wasn't done.
Yeah.
It's probably pretty done now. I'm sure they've patched it up. But in this game, it's all about that you, the main character, get a chip, if you will, like that basically it's like in your head an implant that makes you immortal. But the catch is it's also overriding your brain with the consciousness of another entity that's on the chip. And so it's like a race against time. And then the question also is like, if at one point, you know, you're immortal and it gets tested, like you flatline, the character flatlines and the chip restores his biology and brings him back to life. But at that point, you're immediately being asked the question of, are you dead already? Is this just like a ghost in the machine, an echo that's like a simulation of yourself?
Yeah.
These deep questions are part of the game. And the way it depicts the future and like the city and how gangs work, and I don't know, it's dark. It's basically like if Hell A was taken to the next level of hell, and it's called Night City. There's so much we could break down in Cyberpunk. But I have this slide here. From the game originally was a tabletop RPG like Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
From 94, not that different than FF7 coming from the mid 90s. So in the description of the game world for players to role play in back in 94, actually, okay, just back up. Cyberpunk was originally called Cyberpunk 2020. That's probably why they wanted to get it out in 2020 so bad.
Yeah.
Cyberpunk 2077 takes the concept further into the future because obviously here in 2020, we're still not cyborgs like we were promised, and we don't fly in cars and
thank God.
Whatever. But in the game's booklet, the original tabletop game, they had, I have screenshots on the left from the actual game and then real protests that were happening in 2020. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
In the game's booklet, it says that the world has been basically ruined by diversity and unity. And here's a description of the fictional world of America in 2020 from this 94 game. It is now accepted among historical scholars that in the decades before the collapse, America suffered from the sickness of racism and cultural identity. Everyone wanted to be seen as special. Every group had to be equal to, or preferably better than its neighbors, and fought to protect its special rights. If anyone had something that someone else wanted, they were painted as racist, sexist, elitist, or worse. This divisive me first attitude eventually tore the fabric of American culture apart and caused it to self destruct in a fireball of competing ideologies, none of which truly recognized each other's validity. Diversity led inexorably to anarchy, here in a negative sense.
Yeah, not actual anarchy, but chaos and disorder.
Yeah, because the people think anarchy means chaos.
Right.
Exactly. But yeah, prophetic much? Just leave it there.
Very, very descriptive of right now.
Guy wrote that in 94, a guy wrote that this is what 2020 would be like.
Wow. It's just like
that. For a game.
Yeah. Or like, was he inserted into culture to create this so that we could like have the spell cast?
I don't know. It was such a small game. I mean, I see synchromysticism here.
Yeah.
I don't like, I mean, you probably could have just.
Yeah.
This is where we're going, you know?
And it's that whole thing that like artists actually do sometimes have those synchromistic things or channeled, you know, or just knowledge appears or wisdom appears and it just comes out that way. And that's how art goes. So it is always tricky to ask that question. Like,
that's why I'm not even like mad at the guys that made the Darketype Tarot. I mean, they might have some problems. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
but
they might have some issues.
Maybe they were just trying really hard to show something that they don't necessarily believe in. I don't want to paint like these game developer companies are so huge. There's got to be people of all types in there. Someone wanted to warn us that transhumanism was hell.
Yes.
Some of the artists involved with that game, some of the writers, and then others were like, how many ways can we work in transgenderism as a concept in this game and really make it look like we're super down with that? So there's both things going on at once. That's how I look at it.
I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah, and I am really confused why it takes anyone to show us that transhumanism is hell, because you'd think it's just be an inborn understanding that we have, but apparently not.
I'll show a few more slides from Cyberpunk, but remember, Gnosticism at its root, at least in terms of the surface level, you know, the wrapping paper of what culture interprets it as, the Wikipedia entry, it's going to inform someone that reality is a prison, their body is a cage.
True.
Is a cage for the divine spark.
Yeah.
Real gnosis is the opposite of that. You go, oh my God, this divine spark in this body is awesome in here.
Yeah, I love this. Totally.
This is really freedom, actually. Yeah. Okay, so next slide. Do you hate your meat? The game is littered with the craziest billboards, future advertisements you could ever want to see. And little reports that you can find throughout the game that tell you about like what the world's like. All artificial protein is what everyone's eating. Try our all new delicious meat paste. And then this picture on the right, do you hate your meat? An ad for body implants. That's Gnostic to the core.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, Gnostic to the core if you believe your body is a flesh prison.
Right.
And it's a horrible image. I'm sorry to leave that on the screen, but this is how Elon's people, like, you know,
yeah,
this is the world that they see. Like, they see the world like this. It's a bad place. We need further armoring against nature, against what we really are. We need to replace nature with artificial, synthetic everything.
Because there already is artificial intelligence in other dimensions, and we're just going to let it in, and it's going to look at us as ants. And so if we want to be even close to acceptable for our new overlords, then we definitely need to get implants and get rid of our stupid, flawed, natural ways.
Well, I mean, not to argue with you here, as far as if there's AI in other dimensions, because I really don't know. Or I like what Mitch and I came up with in that previous episode of my show, artificial consciousness, AC, instead of AI. Well, the reason I like that is because, well, first of all, it's 13 as a number, which is interesting. But AC, artificial consciousness, what if consciousness just takes the form of its container? What if AI or AC coming from another dimension is coming from an artificial dimension, which is, I mean, what is a dimension? How it's length and width and these things, right? So what kind of container is a computer? Is the internet? Is that a dimension? Is there an artificial consciousness coming through that dimension, breaking through in our world? Yeah, and it doesn't have to go anywhere supernatural anymore to say it's from another dimension. I just wanted to delineate that as a possibility.
I like that description of it a lot. And I mean, if you look around, you can communicate with anything, like literally anything. It doesn't have to be something that you think of as alive or conscious for your consciousness to be able to get information from it or give information to it, which is the essence of communication, right? So like my car, I can like reach out to it kind of mentally and like psychically and like get like, oh, okay, it kind of feels like it's okay right now or whatever, right? And it's not a living creature, but I kind of try to start to like treat it like it is, because I'm a little bit nuts maybe, but also I feel like if I give it this like name and title and role and this like respect and love, that it like behaves better. And it gives me better results. And so I do that with all my cars. I treat them like little like animals, like friends.
I see no problem with that. I like that. And I've communed with Gandalf from Lord of the Rings on spirit visions.
Exactly. And I
know that's a fictional character, but it can still like I can still reflect with that energy and that idea.
Right. And get your energy interacting with it and exchanging information with it, basically.
Which is really just me pinging the part of myself that is containing Gandalf.
True.
You know, in a way. So
and probably in a way, I'm giving my like life force to a car, which maybe is sick, but
no. I mean, I don't think so. That is that's also an energy system. It's a closed loop energy system. It's got blood. I mean, gas. True. I mean, oil. Yeah. And it's not completely different than the architecture of a human body. And maybe that makes it a little less inverted. They would always build the ancient temples with symbolic similarities to the human body. The universe is said to be like a human body. So everything is energy, is conscious in some respect. Like people do salvia and they accidentally become the closet door. For a long time. Who knows?
Like, I was a blanket for like 5 years. I'm like, dude, that would suck. You're just like have no choice and no free will at all.
Careful with psychedelics, kids. Be careful what you move your attention into when you slip out of this meat suit. Maybe it's pretty lit in here and you just want to stay in here.
Yeah.
Or be, aware. Anyway. Yeah, fun little tangents tonight.
Yes.
Perfect. Here we go. Is your meat a temple or simply a product, commodity, tool, or prison? Here's another ad from the game. Be your best self. Brosif Brewing Company.
Oh my God.
Drinking alcohol increases your risk of developing cancers. They tell you that at the bottom. Things haven't changed that much. There's this weird Griffin logo. I mean, let's not read too much into that, but there's ads like this all over the game world that are just horrific stuff.
Really gross.
Okay, I'm gonna, for the sake of time, maybe not go too deep on this slide. Other than, well, no, I have to. It's such an important part of all this.
Do it.
Because body dysphoria. See that big word at the bottom right?
Yeah.
And see this screenshot from the game. She's like designing her own face in a weird way. Oh, sorry, didn't need to go ahead. Right. So first of all, Cyberpunk got a lot of flack before it came out for not being transy enough, because as this guy in the article here says, to give you a frame of reference, non-binary people have always existed. Genders outside the binary were found in almost every society dating back thousands of years. Okay, so here's a fallacy. They're saying that because someone in other cultures might be a man that identifies with the feminine role or vice versa, that is a different gender. But it's not.
No, it's not.
It's a man that identifies with the female role or a female that identifies with the male role. Totally different story. That's actually, there's nothing wrong or inverted about that.
No.
You just do the type of work and join the type of people you want to be around. It's fine.
Yeah.
So there's already a fallacy, and this is something that's pushed all over. But anyway,
there's so many fallacies that go back to that too, where people are like, oh, all of these tribes had the people of the two spirit. I'm like, maybe. I've seen zero evidence of it. I've just seen a lot of new age people say it. There's no texts with it. There's no like glyphs on rocks that can be interpreted that way that I know of. I have no evidence of that. It's just someone just like started saying it. Now everyone just thinks it's true, and it's just bullshit.
You know what though? I'm not pushing back against you, but I actually have a personal friend he just got married to his partner too, and he's a homosexual guy, and he happened to have a twin in the womb that he absorbed, who was a female twin.
Wow.
Yeah, so there could, I mean, he feels like he identifies with that
Well,
concept of
yeah.
two spirit,
I'm
but it's
not
very
saying
spiritual.
I'm not saying there can't be. I'm saying the idea that it comes that like Native Americans specifically honored and celebrated this has no referential material that I can find. It's just people
Interesting.
saying it right now.
Interesting. And that, yeah, I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that myself. Like I said, I think that these conquered cultures, we get whatever story is convenient about them from
Yes.
the masters. But
Yeah.
suffice to say that my friend who I'm talking about is he has a positively expressed masculine side and feminine side, and he happens to also be a homosexual. Completely, like, so I have to make these caveats that I'm not like anti-homosexuality even,
No.
but there's anyone with eyes to see can tell there's an agenda here to invert the ideas of gender,
Yeah.
and it's
That's
just a
absolutely.
fact.
I
And
hate
then
that. I hate that we have to say that every time we talk about this thing, but yes.
I do too,
Yeah,
but
but
I want people to know that I have compassion for all people and that I don't think it's wrong to
right.
love who you love.
No.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Be you. Do whatever you want.
Yeah. So anyway, here this guy continues. He says, I didn't know that when I was 10, 12, 15, even 18, referring to other cultures having trans people apparently. He says, I experienced dysphoria without a word for it, just a deep discomfort with many aspects of my body. It was easier to imagine myself as a cyborg than my birth sex because it was the closest thing to not male or female I had as a concept. There he doesn't know it, but he just gave away the whole thing. Body dysphoria. That's
Hating your
the
body.
root of believing your body is a prison
Yeah.
and that you're not it in some way. And
Yeah.
that's what you call it. It's body dysphoria. There's more because at this point,
Wow.
people's health has been so brutalized and they've so damaged their bodies that the dysphoria is literally just like it's painful to be alive. I mean, you deal with Hashimoto's. It's painful to be in your body, but you don't let that turn into dysphoria, as in like basically self-hate.
I have much more pain than that in my spine, and I'm deformed, and I have agonizing chronic pain my whole life, and I still love my body. Like, you
And
know.
here's another caveat too. If someone needs a prosthetic because they've lost a limb, and then you could build a badass like robot-sized one, that's not an evil thing.
No.
You know, that's not body dysphoria.
No.
That's a cool use of tech. But just like there are people out there with body dysphoria that actually self-identify as an amputee, and it's like a question legally: should they be allowed to amputate their own arm or have a doctor do it for them because they feel like they're actually an amputee? And that gets into questions like maybe they had a past life as missing that limb and they, who knows, or maybe they're just like really want that victimhood currency of being disabled and they, I don't know. But
Yeah.
body dysphoria is just this key phrase. Keep it in mind. When you
Yeah.
see it, you'll know it. Look out for people that hate being in their body or it hurts to be in their body, and just see the psychological ramifications of that and how it makes these mysteria concepts and dogmas that much more attractive, because it's like, oh, this is my escape route
Yeah.
from this hell that I've created for myself or incarnated into that I believe I'm in.
Or that I never even chose to come to and was trapped here by the accident of my birth, which is its own thing too. But yeah, I've never connected that dysphoria with this Gnostic idea, and they're very similar. Thank you for connecting those.
It's so important.
Yeah.
It's actually that the body dysphoria
It's like key.
solves all the questions
Yeah.
out there about what's going on in the world.
Really,
Once
yeah,
you've-
like why they're doing it. It's really good.
That's what Reich talks about. I mean, Reich doesn't use that phrase, but that's all the armoring in Reich's that Reich describes: psychological armoring, character armoring, physical armoring in the biofield. Even Eileen's work, like the tuning fork work, when she's talking about getting out the energetic tangles in the aura, those tangles are armoring, hardening. And when something gets like hardened, it kind of hurts, if you will. Think about your muscles. Whenever you have like constriction, hardening, that's also like pain and discomfort. So anyway, like we need to loosen up the flow in our body, and then it's going to feel a lot better to be in it. That's kind of
Don't
the
stop
gist of it.
moving.
Yeah, life is always in constant motion, but also you paradoxically root yourself in the stillness. Yes, for sure. It's both at once.
Yeah.
Um, we'll jump through this real fast. But after they got the bad feedback before the game came out, they added more transiness to the game, which no one was satisfied with. By the way, they still got a lot of problems from feedback.
Because it's like they say, if you like bow to the mob's gonna then just know that they can make you bow, and they're gonna keep doing it like it's stupid.
Yeah, they tried to play it both ways, where they showed how corporations were using identity politics and manipulating the idea of being trans and the ideas of sexuality to control humanity. And then they also tried to have like just some down to earth, cool trans people as characters in the game. And also, they gave you the option to customize your junk in the character creation screen. You could be, you don't choose a male or female character now. It's called a body type. So you could have like you could have breasts. You could be smooth like a Ken doll down at the bottom. You could have a robot penis. There's a lot of options, and you actually can circumcised, uncircumcised. You see it in the character creation screen, and it's pointless.
Yeah.
There's no part of the game where your pants are off.
Yeah. Or your genitals.
There's some sex
like...
scenes, and they don't even really show genitals there. So it was all just to like cater to this trans crowd of you needed to be able to identify with the character you're playing as. So they need to have some weird Frankenstein body of surgical removal of what God gave you.
Yeah.
Weird stuff. So here's the question I pose, and why all this is important. How much of yourself can you replace and still be real? And this is important. Body parts are archetypes. Archetypes are arcs, arches, the sky clock, the zodiac, the head, Aries, the feet, Pisces, the reproductive organs, Scorpio. So when what are you doing to nature, the fractal, the outward doth from the inward roll.
Yeah.
The inward dwells the innermost soul. Your innermost soul rolls outward to the external reality. And man must decide what version of nature he wants to be, a corrupted archetype or a sanctified temple.
Especially if we are anything like the helper T cells of Earth, or whatever you want to think of that as like the defense, then you're like letting this into you and purposely like transmogrifying your like nature or whatever. Then you're literally destroying that. You're letting that machine energy or whatever that anti-nature, anti-life energy is, like even closer to the source.
This guy on the left is the main, like the final villain, final boss.
Basically a robot with like some human face skin.
Darth Vader they told us with Darth Vader a long time ago. You're more a machine now than man.
More a machine now than man.
And that's evil.
I like to say that to NPCs.
Guys out there, guys and gals and robots, if you haven't seen me and Lindsay talk about the transhuman tarot from this game, it is wild.
Yeah.
You'll learn a lot about the major arcana.
That
first
was our
of all,
first episode together, right? On your.
That's how we met, and now we're best friends.
Yeah.
That was so good.
That's so funny.
People will love that conversation.
Yeah.
Here's some of the images of those tarot, though. It's crazy. I pulled out a few just as reminders. We don't have to linger on it, but I thought this was just the absolute example. This card.
Yeah.
Of what we're getting into here.
So much beauty in the original, and then just dark, corrupted.
Synchromistically, we just entered Gemini, and this is the Gemini card too.
Oh yeah.
Of all the cards I could have picked for this slideshow.
That's funny.
And I brought out this card because on the left here, it's Hermeticism that created the original symbolism of the tarot, or something earlier than that, something pure. But Gnostics also will say that on the left is Sophia and Yaldabaoth in the Strength card.
Yeah.
Partially why. I don't want to linger on this too much, but partially why the lion symbolism might be used is because it has to do with this the sun and high summer. Strength, the most powerful part of the sky clock, would be why Yaldabaoth is shown that way.
Yeah.
Another element is the digital ascension that we've already talked about. But why that term is important is because religious cults and new age fake gurus everywhere are telling you about ascension. 5D ascension is the same bullshit as 5G utopia.
Thank you.
Where are you going to ascend to?
Yeah. Why don't you want to be here? I mean, I
You
get
think
that
that
there's
if
some evil
this is your
people
route,
around,
if you
but-
think you're ascending up from here and this is the bottom of your ladder and this place is a fucked up terror zone, that's going to be a good foundation to ascend up?
Yeah, true. That's a very good question.
Anyone telling you they got the keys to your ascension and that they told you anything other than cleanse your organs, they're a liar.
Yeah. Cleanse your organs, take care of your trauma, heal yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. Right. And then you automatically, people are like, oh, well, he's enlightened or she's enlightened. I'm like, well, we're all various levels of enlightened, right? Because enlightened really literally means to like bring the light in, lighten yourself. And if you have this darkness, like you were describing the armoring or the hardness of your energetic area, right? If that's like some darkness or some cloudiness or whatever, if you clear that up, like you're lighter, you're enlightened. Maybe it's a final destination too. I don't know. But like in the meantime, it's an active verb that's going on. You are enlightening yourself, or you're not.
And it's a destructive process about removing that which isn't you.
Yeah.
It's a fire that purifies and burns away the chaff.
Yes.
And what would that stuff be? What is that which is not you? Hypocrisy, simulation, artificiality.
Yeah, burn it away.
Important caveat that is hard to really detail in full, but language has really messed us up in the sense that artificiality has the same prefix art as good, something good. Art doesn't mean evil. Even artificial that thus is not evil. There can be artificiality in the sense that it was created by man's imagination that is harmonious with nature, coherent, reflective of truth and source. In fact, anytime that you break into your creative flow and you're inspired, like the art Johnny does, is there meaning to that? In a nihilistic sense, no. But in a synchromistic sense, everyone that looks at it is like, oh my God, this means this to me. And that's real art.
Exactly. He's always like,
And
oh, it's not anything. I'm like, it's everything.
it's no thing, though.
Yeah.
It ain't a thing.
True.
It's a process that he's in. It's the Tao. It's a verb.
Yeah.
The reason that happens is because he just keeps on trucking. He just keeps on making art. He doesn't worry about what it is or what it means. He's just in the process. The process is his God. And that's real shit. That's why I love that dude so much. I'm like, this guy gets it.
Yeah, see, and if anybody wants to
If
know
I
what they
wasn't
don't
doing
know-
this show, that would be my life. If I didn't feel like I needed to do this because of where we're at, then I would just literally, that would be my life, what he does.
Yeah. And if
I
anybody,
feel like I had to sacrifice that to a degree.
if anybody doesn't know Johnny's art yet and wants to go see it, then he has done an episode on Rogueways, Johnny Larson, and also recently on Weaving Spiders Welcome. And he does the music at the beginning and end of every Rogueways episode that you've ever heard, as well as any art that I probably ever have shared.
Yeah, dude's just on a flow all the time. Totally. Super awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good example though of how okay, the other thing about art too that isn't a caveat is like we call things as qigong or energy work practices healing arts, right? And there's nothing unnatural about that. There's nothing artificial about that. It's our body doing what body does. And we're getting into that and opening up that flow channel in ourself. Can I drop another Reich quote real quick? I have it right here.
Do.
Dude is just on fire. When you read his book, it's just nothing but quotes. Once we open up to the flow of energy within our body, we can also open up to the flow of energy in the universe. That's orgone and prana and Tao and chi. So anyway, these healing arts, they are antithesis to the terms of art, of legalism, of the medical mafia, these different scientific dictatorship type systems where people in different aspects of the schools of science are compartmentalized away from each other, kept artificially separated through the jargon that they use in their field that the other field has different definitions for. This is called, legally speaking, the terms of art. It's important because you have to have a defined set of terms of art to have a system with a hierarchy like the bar or like the medical industry. This is what was done by Rockefeller Medicine, was came in and established these terms of art, what this means, what that means, what you can do with this, what you can't do with that. It's all, so that's like the inversion of the arts, is terms of art. So here is a very important thing, is that is done through words.
Yeah.
And words are only ever a symbol of something, at best they're a description of something real, but they aren't the thing itself, or they aren't the reality itself. There I go, even using the word thing again. So I just wish that we had better terms for our art, our healing arts that did. And I have to make this distinction all the time because I don't want people to think I'm anti-art. This is the farthest thing from true. I'm so into art. Look at my clothes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just important. Like, art itself isn't the evil thing. It's like, how coherent is it of nature? How descriptive of nature is it? Or is it total inversion of nature? Blockage of flow. Important distinctions. Hey, I don't know if you want to jump in on that. We're just really riffing here.
Yeah. I was thinking about just how horrible words really are as representations for anything. And as an author, I always talk about this, and maybe it surprises some people for me to say that words are straight shit. And that's why I love writing, because I love trying to wring out of them the actual meaning that exists in the world, which is almost always nearly impossible, even for really good writers and authors, because words are so shitty. They're really, really bad. And so what's better than the words themselves is the meaning and the feeling and the things that you can't really even like teach or touch in a written piece or in any given piece of art. And it goes back to the idea of like what real Gnosticism is and what true Gnosticism should mean and does mean. And every time I use it for myself, it's what it means, and it's what the word means. And that's to know something and to experience it directly. You can only know something if you can experience it directly. And if you can experience it directly, then you can know, and no words can even express it. You know, there's these experiences you have in your life that are like the height of your experience, and I can never express to somebody what it's like to like sit and hang out with God. Can't. You have to go experience that yourself. I can tell you all about it. And you might think I'm insane, and you might be like, wow, that's so cool. And you might feel a little bit of it, like if you're with me, like coming off of me while I'm describing it, and get like a touch and sort of have an idea, but you'll never know what I mean. I can't tell you. Words are shitty. Gnosticism in its true sense.
You got to dip your toes into that ocean yourself.
Yep. You got to know. You got to experience it. That's true Gnosticism for me.
I'm with you. Yeah, I love the distinction we're making there. You know, you're talking about language being shit. It's not that bad, but you want to know what's bad about it? Is being literal only.
Yeah.
We've been trained to speak prosaically, and we've lost touch with the poetic side of language. And that as soon as you do, you've basically divorced from reality, because reality is multidimensional, multifaceted, multi-layered. And if all you're doing with your language is trying to clinically describe something and define it within a box of terms, it's already fake.
Lost it, yeah.
Yeah, it's already
when
fake.
People like are like, do you, like, what did you like? I don't know. You'll say something and they're like, all like caught up and like, well, that means it. I'm like, did you know what I meant or not? If you know what I meant, then it was good, and if you didn't, then like that's where the problem is. But you did know what I meant. You're just like hung up on like the grammar of it, or like, who cares? They're like, you know what I meant.
It's tricky. Yeah, it's good to get right? Just in the beginning of a conversation with somebody, and they use a word that could be one of those things that trips you up based on the meaning. Just let's define it together. Like, what do you mean by it? And I'll tell you what I mean by it, and we'll go from there. But I have this problem all the time. I throw out words as if everyone knows what I mean by it, and I gotta back up. And that's why that's
why words are shitty.
That's why this is so long. There's just so many like, okay, this is what I mean by this, and here's the dictionary definition. And
let's establish the groundwork first. Well,
because look, the legalese, Latin that the Vatican has got all their papal bulls in and the bullshit, those are dead languages.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means it doesn't change. It means that 100 years from now, what they wrote in that court proceeding means what it meant then to all the people who know those terms of art, giving a huge advantage to the controller class because they can communicate effectively between each other because they do have agreement on their terms.
Yeah.
And there is a hierarchy there. And in the common vulgar speech, we're not going to have that unless we have some sort of artificial control placed on us.
Constantly
So we don't
evolving.
want that, but we need to know that that's what we're up against. And then we need to up our game of communication, commuting in
Yeah.
in unity, if you will.
I love that. I'll throw one more thing out there about meaning and language and words. There's a guy who wrote The Things We Carried. It's a really super cool book if anybody enjoys Vietnam. He writes very poetically and very prosaically, and he has this chapter that's called Story Truth, and he's talking to whoever, and he's, people are asking him, like, did that really happen? And he's like, well, it didn't happen, but it happened. Like, it didn't happen that way, but it happened that way, and you're like, what? And you really start to understand, like, it didn't happen this way, but if I didn't tell it this way, you wouldn't know what I meant or how it felt or, like, what happened to me. And I'm like, that's so true, right? Like, the telling of the story is never, I did it myself when I wrote my own memoir too. Like, it's not exactly what happened, but if I wrote exactly what happened, it wouldn't even make sense to anybody. Like, I have to, like, rearrange it slightly for you to get even any of the meaning out of it. But that's like this living.
That's why kids will
thing.
exaggerate a story so big.
Yeah. No,
They want you to
like
know how big it was to them. Like,
yeah.
there wasn't 50 spiders, but it felt like it because they saw like 3 spiders.
Yeah. Exactly. Story truth.
Story truth. Hey, there you go. Fun. Okay, we're gonna move forward. We can get through these slides. We can do this in 30 minutes or less. I don't want to try to like force us into 3 hours, but I want to be real about we're about to get a serious can of worms. More cosplayers. Anyone recognize this logo, these characters?
I never played World of Warcraft, but I understand that that's what this is.
Look at, I'm not judging this, by the way. Cosplay is cool. This takes creativity. Yeah. This takes like imagination. This is also a type of art. Like, they built these costumes. They're cool.
No, dude,
but it's also like, you also have to wonder how seriously do they take their virtual world, and like it can't all be perfectly healthy, more or less. Not that this can be done healthy. I'm not judging these people or this instance, but like, I've been to Comic Cons. I've seen some shit.
Yeah.
And cosplay is weird, but this is not weird. Like, don't do it. It's weird. Like, what goes on in that world. Like, it's like 1 degree away from people meeting up wearing furry costumes and having orgies.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was downtown with my mom and dad, and we saw a bunch of people in like furry mascot costumes. And I had to explain to them that they were going to go somewhere and meet a group of other people in mascot costumes and have sex with their costumes on. They're like, this is a thing. And I was like, yeah. Sorry to break your innocence, mom and dad.
Yeah, and sometimes kids don't get it too. I have a friend who teaches special ed in high school, and their students like don't understand that when they're like celebrating furries, they love furries, they draw furries, they try to like find furry stuff to wear, and them and their parents don't get that it's like this super sexualized group and subculture.
And you remember the Final Fantasy house where the crazy cult leader Joanna was telling the other kids that they are incarnated fictional characters? They call themselves otherkin, the furry people. They actually identify with like, I'm a fox in the body of a human. And then that gets real weird when you know like Eastern folklore of fox spirits that will possess somebody and lead them to their death and all kinds of funny things. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's perfectly healthy. I have a very outside perspective on it, but it seems off. I don't feel good about it. So World of Warcraft, in case someone has not heard of this game, it is a massively multiplayer online game, the one that ruled them all. Millions and millions of players, all in one big virtual online world. And it was a never-ending game. They just kept adding content, and there was raiding guilds where like you literally had to apply for a job in the fake world, and your job would be with a guild. And they would be like, okay, at 7 p.m., all 40 of us are meeting here to kill this dragon. It's going to take 3 hours, and we're going to fail over and over again. And then at the end, we'll get some treasure, and like 3 of us will get treasure, and everyone else will have received nothing other than we won.
Yeah.
Anyway, this article that I took a few snippets from, these guilds, they became world famous if they were the first to down a boss or whatever in the whole world once it was added to the game. And the world famous guild Exodus, funny enough, they're called Exodus, and they decided to drop out of World of Warcraft's raiding race for hardcore players. That's a bit synchronistic in itself. But they say, we've basically been killing ourselves off slowly since day one. But hold on. The nuance isn't clear here. I just want everyone to know. The article goes on to explain that they're not saying they're killing their bodies by playing the game 24/7. They're saying that they were so hardcore that they made their own competition that much worse, because to compete with them, the other people had to get even more hardcore. And it was like an arms race of who can be in the chair the longest forever and never stop playing. And so they killed off their own guild in the sense, because the raiding community became too competitive. Even though they were number one, they couldn't keep it up anymore.
God.
And people need to know that, like, around the world, babies have died in their fucking cribs because their parents were playing this game.
Yes.
And not in reality. Okay.
Yeah. Like wives and husbands have broken up, jobs have been lost, like people. Yeah, it's insane.
We cannot express how much damage the game didn't do the damage. The person who was obsessed with it damaged themselves.
Yes.
Okay. But in my freshman year of college, I played this game all the time because there was no one controlling me anymore.
Yeah.
I got a 1.0 at the end of my freshman year.
You're like, I can eat tricks all day and play games. Woo!
I was drinking Mountain Dew, actually. I gained 100 pounds that year.
100?
Yes. Imagine me plus 100.
Wow.
Maybe from where I'm at now, it was like plus 70. But at the time, I went from like 170 to, I weighed myself one time and it was 260. And I think I was bigger than that at some time. So I just rounded off 100 in a year. Wow. I still have like scars on my body from how fast my skin stretched.
Wow.
Because I just said, I went from being a sports player and a high school student to all day World of Warcraft, not even going to class, drinking Mountain Dew, eating pizza, waffles, ice cream, whatever they gave me at the dorms. Yeah. Horrible food at the dorms. I mean, there were healthier-ish choices, but I was just like, woo, freedom, do whatever I want. I'm invincible. So that ended up being actually a blessing in disguise, because I was kicked out of journalism school at University of Missouri, which is where they like groom the next CNN robot.
Oh, thank God. Yeah.
Yeah.
You freed yourself through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wound up in the English department learning about creative writing and symbolic literacy and analyzing great works of art and film. And now I have symbolic literacy in my toolkit. Yeah. I was always adept at that. And this is what we're doing now. Yeah. Symbolic literacy.
Basically, that's all I've ever done.
Symbolic literacy is psychic self-defense. Put that in your mind, people.
I agree.
Can't be manipulated by things that you consciously understand.
That's true.
At least not to the same degree. Not without your willing consent.
Yeah, but do you think there's something about that game that is more addictive for some reason, or do you think it's just chance that that's the game that's like ruined everybody's lives?
Dude, they had they openly hire psychologists to analyze the dopamine drip pattern of how many times you level up and how many points you get to spend and all these different elements of the game, and they fine-tuned it over years. I mean, it's still fine-tuned right now to be as addictive as possible psychologically. So no, there was black magic involved in that.
That's very good to know. That that group psychology too, I'm sure they built in, where like you have these guilds, so because you can't beat it without people, and so you have to join up, and then you have the pressure of that, like, where were you? Why were you there? You let us down, or whatever.
Good point. I never really thought about that. The groupthink side. Yeah. It's real
Peer pressure.
Anyway, the second year of college, this is funny. My sophomore year of college, I became a guild leader in World of Warcraft. So in a lot of ways, I actually learned a lot of like how I manage people on Telegram and my leadership skills, if you will, and like communicating with a group and organizing people in a good way. Actually, I learned a lot of that from being a guild leader in World of Warcraft, and I got better grades my sophomore year. I somehow managed to like do both, even though the game load was more intense than the first year. I don't know how I pulled that off, but I did. I didn't stop the game. I rose. Maybe it was just that I was it was easier to do the work in the English department than the journalism department because I actually kind of liked it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a lot of the game, the playtime. If I went into the game and I typed /played, which is the command that will tell you how much time you've played the game, it's, let's just say it's not measured in hours, it's not measured in days, and it's not measured in weeks.
Wow.
Now I would leave it logged in and like go do something else for hours.
Yeah.
So there's some of that's not real, but the logged in time of that character, that virtual world, is extensive and pretty crazy. Another thing about games like World of Warcraft is the human trafficking networks and creepy pedophiles use those game worlds to communicate with each other because those chat channels aren't monitored to the same degree.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And there's like artificial economies in the game. Chinese people play American games like this to make, all they do is just grind and farm game money. There's like warehouses full of Chinese guys playing this game, making game money, and that's their job. And then they sell it through a website for American dollars to players who are too busy to grind out to make that much in-game money.
That is
It's
insane.
so weird.
That is its
Yeah,
own virtual
that's a job.
world. It sucks.
I feel bad for the people that's their job too. It's
Yeah.
not a fun game anymore at that point.
No. Yeah.
Anyway, let's continue. My
Yikes.
God.
My God.
Okay, next slide. If I can make it go. Okay, so here's another element of games like this: digital materialism, the freedom to look like whoever you wish you were.
Yeah.
A mask over a mask over a mask, right?
Seriously. Yeah.
Like this is a character in World of Warcraft. They made their character look like Thor.
Which Thor is a character that's over a human person. That's like a mythology too. There's like how many layers?
Layers
deep
and
does this
layers
go?
of-
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. Mask on a mask on a mask. We know persona means mask. We know what person means legally. A lot of us do.
Yeah.
I thought this would be fun.
Yeah.
How we see our digital identity versus the reality of our digital identity.
It's seriously true. Just that scarecrow.
Yeah,
Straw
not
man.
real. Not real life. So this is just an example of what you were talking about. This is a guy who lost his wife, his children, because he couldn't stop playing. Look at the look on his face. I hate this for him, dude. It really like ruined his life. Before class or late at night while his family slept, he would squeeze in time at the computer. This is important. He would often eat meals at the computer, microwave burritos, energy drinks, foods. That's why I gained so much weight, as I was drinking energy drinks.
Yeah.
Those things are
Shit,
bad.
It's nasty. It's horrible.
Dude, I know people who had like heart problems in their early 20s from drinking Monster 666 energy.
Yeah. I try to
By
tell
the
my
way,
students, but
everyone knows Monster 666, right?
well, I don't know if everyone
Logo.
does, but I think this community does. Hopefully.
Yeah, so here's the quote from him. This is why this slide's in here. Playing WoW made me feel godlike. I have ultimate control and can do what I want with few real repercussions. The real world makes me feel impotent. A computer malfunction, a sobbing child, a suddenly dead battery. The littlest hitch in daily living feels profoundly disempowering.
Right, and that is by design. Like, this is why, like, my whole goal of 100% of what I've ever done is to try and help people feel empowered, you know, because we are powerful beings and we're powerful people, and, you know, we're meant to totally disconnect from that and imagine that we are powerless and feel like we are being attacked and controlled and all of these things. And a lot of the narratives that are put forth are reinforcing that idea, like, you're powerless, you like all these like Illuminati and all these forces, you could never like overcome this, and it's like not true. But that's exactly why, because you're so easily trapped if you genuinely buy into that you are a powerless being and that everything is just victim. You're just a victim. Everything's happening to you. You've never chosen any of it. It's not true. You know?
Yeah, and how much everyone's probably noticing how that reflects the idea of digital ascension,
Yeah.
of going into the computer, sending your consciousness into the computer and becoming a god of your own artificial world. But here's the thing, that world that he feels godlike in, you can only do certain things that are programmed into that world.
Yeah, it's not actually
Fight other players, fight monsters, try to make gold. Where's the Where's the godlike power again? Please remind me. Can you create anything? I mean, maybe if you were a hacker and you wanted to like build your own game files and have your own private server. In fact, that pertains to the next slide. People loved World of Warcraft so much and they hated how the game changed over time because they kept doing silly things like trying to make convenience elements in the game where you would actually spend most of your time playing the game and not just standing around trying to find other people to help you or doing boring repetitive tasks. They streamlined it, tried to make the cage a little nicer, right? But some people are like, no, it needs to be the original, the hardcore, everything really challenging, nothing, no quality of life improvements in the game as they were constantly making
I want
updates.
razor wire on my bars.
Yeah, and so they would create servers of the original, what they call vanilla WoW, and people did this renegade style, and you could go in and play and you didn't have to pay a subscription to the company. Because that's the other thing, you don't just buy this game. You buy the game $60, and then every year there's a new expansion for 40 or 50, $60, and then every month you're paying them $12, $15 a month because they have to keep the lights on and develop new content. But in 2019, Blizzard was like, no more renegade servers of vanilla WoW, the original. We'll just put out classic WoW. We'll just give you the exact game we gave you in 2005. And I call it nostalgia for a simpler grind. Nostalgia is powerful. What did we talk about with FF7?
Yeah.
People lived in this world in their childhood. So I know people personally that play classic WoW right now and have since 2019, and they play it all the time. And it's just like they just went into a time loop back to 2005 and they're repeating stuff that by today's standards is really boring. Back then it was like, wow, it's a big interconnected world. The graphics are cool. This has never been done. Now it's like we've far surpassed this in terms of a fun game.
Yeah.
It's no, like, this isn't fun anymore. But the game's subscriber count doubled in 2019 when they put this out. It was a great move for them as a money-making move.
Wow.
Again, no hate on you if you play classic WoW right now. I just think it's crazy. I could not do it.
Yeah.
It is so boring. Another thing about World of Warcraft is, I'll just go right into it. Wait, do you have thoughts on that, about the nostalgia thing?
I mean, it's a nice trap, and I always think about, like, our generation especially, I think, is, like, I've always felt like we're, like, harder to, like, advertise to or to, like, trap our mind or convince us of things for some reason. I feel like we just have some special, and maybe I'm just full of hubris and ego, I don't know, but I've just felt like it's, like, harder for it to, like, get us to buy into shit. But now that it's like been long enough since our childhood, I feel like our nostalgia is like its own trap, and that's the thing that's like finally working. And I don't know.
Look at Ready Player One.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't see the movie, but I read the book a long time ago. And that's what draws people in, is like this. For them, it was 80s stuff.
Yeah.
And it was all about like who had the best trivia knowledge. And it's all knowledge about stuff that doesn't exist in reality. And like my head, it might seem like I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. 90% of the stuff that I know stuff about is all, for some reason, I cannot forget like a single detail of a game that I played when I was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yet like other things that, I don't know, how to fix a car. It's never been interesting to me.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate in a way, but like,
right.
Yeah, my head is filled with this stuff. That's why I can break down a lot of the symbolism in games, that I know these games really well. They're embedded in who I am. So I'm trying to make some good out of that.
Yeah.
by like, what does it mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, let's look real quick at the cosmos of World of Warcraft as depicted in one of the companion books for the game. I don't really tell you this in the game. If you were a super nerd and you want to get deep into the lore, they give you that option.
Wow.
But this is just the Gnostic cosmos and then the World of Warcraft cosmos. It looks a lot similar.
Very similar.
And the World of Warcraft, this, whatever you want to think of this, they put out an expansion every year, and every new expansion that they put out is based on a different part of the world's mythology. So they just like rip off Norse mythology, rip off Chinese mythology, whatever. Every expansion is just, maybe it's not a rip off. Maybe that's just the only way you can create stories. But I think that they're just trying to tap into this atavistic symbolism and make it that much more attractive and interesting, because it definitely worked on me.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. Anyway, look at the top left of the World of Warcraft one. You see that?
Yeah.
I'd like to zoom in on that someday and see what because it honestly looks like the Hebrew characters for 666 in the middle of that Star of David.
Oh, wow.
The monster symbol. And I didn't even notice that till just now for the first time ever. So it makes me wonder.
Yeah.
I look really close. I mean, it does kind of look like that. Weird.
I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
Weird.
Sneak it in everywhere they can.
Who knows? Anyway, so we're basically done here. I just want people to know Assassin's Creed is the most Gnostic simulation theory thing ever. It's literally about, like in that game story, simulation theory is totally real. And here's a slide. I didn't know that I had this in here. It's been a while since I looked at this slideshow, but they found that vault in the pyramid, supposedly. Very bizarre.
So weird.
So here we're going to close where we began, from Baudrillard. He says, to dissimulate is to pretend not to have what one has. To simulate is to feign to have what one doesn't have. In both senses, that's hypocrisy. So what I've called the gamer's paradox is dissimulating personal responsibility while simulating godhood.
Yeah, because it is both. Both are happening at the same exact time.
What are you doing when you're playing a game 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours in a day? What are you responsible for in reality? I know because I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
I played games like it was a full-time job.
And you're pretending not to have
most of my life.
Real life and your real responsibilities, and your real needs.
You know what happened when I stopped doing that? This stuff. You know?
Yeah. Like understanding real life.
Art. I started
living.
making art.
Yeah.
I started getting my shit together. So anyway, last slide. Good. I hate South Park now. I don't want to talk about it, but this is they did a South Park World of Warcraft episode, and the joke was, how do you kill that which has no life? Because this was their enemy in the game world. They're fighting this guy who was really strong in World of Warcraft, but that's what he looked like in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like superhero, like the Thor guy in the game.
But that joke, how do we kill that which has no life?
Yeah.
We've got to think about this.
Kind of nailed it.
If we're the white blood cells, how do you kill a virus, metaphorically, when viruses aren't even alive, right?
Yeah.
According to the viral theory of germ theory and that whole take. But,
well, in this whole...
metaphorically, how do we kill that which has no life? What do we do about this artificial consciousness that is now... It is created, artificial consciousness in the sense of our worldview is a filter over reality that has changed reality because of how we act out in reality.
Yeah.
How do we stop that?
And that's that whole system, right? Yeah. Artificial intelligence, this whole Gnosticism thing of being trapped in the Archonic, the demonic, all of that, whatever you want to call any of that stuff, is all that anti-life, the anti-life equation, this anti-life sort of energy. And how do you kill it? You can't, right? If it doesn't have any life, but you can live so fully that it can't touch you. I always love this quote from Buckminster Fuller, and it's basically that quote about, you shouldn't waste time ripping down what you don't love and ripping down the old and destroying this system that you hate. Instead, you should just build that which will replace it for yourself, and then others catch on to that and build it too. And if we were all doing that, none of this would matter. They can't trap you, So how do you kill that which has no life? Well, you just live so fully that it cannot touch you.
That's so right on. Yeah. Yeah. What happens if you have all the resources you need to survive coming from you or people personally and trust? The source. Then the source.
Yeah.
Your source, metaphorically. As many things in your life that are connected to keeping you alive that you can find out the source of and verify the purity of that or take over it, that literally equates to knowing God or knowing source.
Yeah.
You are knowing the source of your life, where this food came from, where that water came from. It's literal in that sense. It is, and that is prosaic and poetic at once.
Yes.
You're knowing the source, you're knowing the creator. You are a creator, you know the creator. Johnny is a creator. We talked about him. That's the creator comes through him.
Yeah.
The archetype of the Tao, of the flow of Jehovah, is coming through in the moment of opening up and surrendering to the process of creation. You know the creator in that moment, and then you learn from God. You you make things that teach you things that you didn't even know you knew.
Yes. I sometimes read like old things I wrote and I'm like, holy shit. Like I had shit figured out. Like, whoa, but I know that I wasn't actually meaning what I'm now getting out of it back then when I wrote it. But now what I'm getting out of it is like super profound. I'm like, whoa. I like
That's
encoded
it.
shit for myself for the future and for anyone else who like, you know, needs to get
That's
it.
it.
Yeah.
That is it.
It's wild. It happens to me all the time. I'm like, whoa.
I
Time
can't believe how
travel.
fast the almost 3 hours has flown by.
That is really crazy because it doesn't feel like it. It really actually has almost been.
How's
3
the chat? I
hours.
miss everybody.
They're good. We got a lot of people. Yeah, we have like most of the people I think who have been here the whole time. So that's pretty rad. Thanks, guys. But yeah, I like it. Serena Del Mar is saying it is just a game and we can steal the game. Create our own game. We can play it ourselves. It's also, that's what I was thinking with these people who are like sitting around and creating this in the game or creating that, even the cosplay stuff. I agree with you. It's beautiful and cool. And like, I want to wear some of those outfits and like, that'd be fun. But like, wouldn't it also be really cool and maybe cooler if you put that much effort into creating your own sort of outfit and character that you made for yourself, or like, you know, like literally creating something new instead of just copying something that, again, I don't have a problem with.
Well, even
but
copying, you know, is that so wrong? Like, what if you took elements that you liked from a character that was fictional and then you made your own thing, but you're like, what creativity isn't a sort of hodgepodge of elements that already existed?
It's true.
Is there anything new under the sun? You know, I mean, that reflects in this World of Warcraft repetition of world mythology and bastardization of it, you could say, or just a ripoff, or you could just say that they had to build with what's there. And these are archetypes and they're atavistic to human consciousness and they will be perennial, just like this sort of, you know, inverted artificiality is seeming to be a perennial thing that it's just, and why would that be? Because process doesn't end. Eternity doesn't end. Flow doesn't end. It actually, it's so important. This is a huge lesson for me and a couple of people I was working with personally, energy work stuff, that why 3 days later after we exorcise this demon, metaphorically, is it so hard right now? When it was like, wow, I really feel jazzed up. We killed this thing. It's gone. Why is it now like, this is heavy? Because you need the practice every day. That's why it's called a practice. You don't just be like, okay, I've done the psychic vampirism shielding. I've restored my aura with this visualization. No, you did that yesterday.
Yeah.
This is today.
Right.
Maybe you don't need to do the same thing every day, but you need, the process
You need
continues.
something. Yeah.
Process never ends. There is no enlightenment and it's over.
Right.
After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, period.
Yes. Yes, I actually really love that. I had my therapist said like one of her parting sort of bits of suggestion to me when I like graduated therapy or whatever was she's like, just don't ever think that you've arrived. And I was like, what does that even mean? And she's like, you know, like people who are like, oh, I've arrived, I'm done, I did it, and now it's done. She's like, don't do that. Like, you're never done. You don't arrive. Like, you just keep going. And I was like, okay, I can like chill with that. I can see. And the more I live, the more I'm like, I totally get what she meant. As soon as you think you're done, you're enlightened, or you've reached your goal and you're done now or whatever, then you do stop. And then what is your life for at that point? You know, where are you going? You can always keep going. In fact, if you stop, keep going, you die. Death is just the stopping of a movement or a system, right? And changing into something else. So, I mean, do it if you want, I guess, but I totally see the wisdom in that. Like, don't pretend that you've arrived. And that's also, I really think when people...
And that's why we deal with this evil thing or that which has no life continually.
Yeah, I think it thought it arrived a long time ago, and then it realized like, oh, now I have to need other people who are still moving in order to like keep going.
Yeah, it's got to keep eating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also has to keep eating, but it's a different type of it's vampiric self-vampirism. And you know, it really does connect to the psychic vampirism show we did before. All these topics connect in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just really love the message too, you know, that this world isn't a trap, your body isn't a trap, and that if you can, you know, it's kind of perspective. Like you can go outside in the fall and you can be like, oh, my plants are dead and I like ate all the fruit and now it's gone and now we're going to go into the cold, dark winter and we're all suffering now or whatever. Or you can be like, oh, how beautiful this plant that gave me all its fruit and its food and now it's going to like decompose and feed my soil and then I get to have like snow and it's so pretty and I like to feel cold sometimes or whatever. And, you know, like you can have these two different ways or multiple different ways of looking at things. But really, like, why would you choose to look at it as a trap if it's not a trap? Are you literally constantly living in torture? Like, I've never been, and I have incredible amounts of, like, health issues that keep me in lots of pain a lot of the time, and I still recognize that the vast majority of my life has been pretty freaking incredible and amazing and beautiful, and I've had beautiful experiences, you know? And so I don't look at it as a trap. And I asked people on Facebook the other day, I said, what did you come here for? And some people said like, oh, I didn't come here. My parents had sex and here I am. And I just said, okay. Because I'm like, I mean, if that's your perspective, nobody could change it, right? But like, it's pretty limiting to feel like you had literally no choice. You were trapped here. It was an accident of your birth. And now this is just shitty life. Like that, that's not gonna maybe lead you to your highest bliss and like truth and creativity and, you know, experience, but it's also do whatever you want. I just see a maybe path that would be more fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I had a grand plan and scheme for coming here. It's fun. And I have some personal private ideas about that, but also maybe it's okay for the meaning of life to be life.
Yeah.
You know, life itself is its own meaning. I mean, does that not sort of encapsulate the fact that we are meaning generating creatures in a way? Life is its own meaning. We're here to just continue. Like existence exists and it always exists and we will continue to exist within existence. I don't know. You know, we could say like, that's like basically taking the nihilism, the truth nuggets out of the nihilism of that fucking guy who hated Dick Tree, whatever his name was, Circle Master.
Yeah.
But also like applying it wisely. Like, yeah, there is no meaning, the one size fits all for everybody. Right. But what do we have in common? We exist. Life exists. Being as a verb. So I drew a card to like conclude, right? Yeah, it's so good. It's the arousing. Ooh. It is lightning over lightning. I interpret lightning in the I Ching as life force energy, as the animating electric power of the biosphere. Dude. And it's double, just like the other one. This is active as fuck.
Yeah.
This is like a very similar to like the masculine aspect of what the first card was. Right. Let's see if I still got it. So, no, I shuffled everything. It's somewhere in there.
It was the yin woman, feminine energy.
I was seeing if I could do like a fun trick and just pull it right out, but I don't know. Yeah. So what was I talking about? My name Chance Being Thunder on Facebook a long time ago. This was part of that. This card means a lot to me. We're going through this moment right now. The arousing, the flash of lightning, that which is shocking. Like what happens when the lightning is flashing? You can see for a second. And every one of these false flags, more people see for a second in the darkness. My family, when they saw the censorship I was being treated with over COVID stuff at the very beginning of the year, they were like, they started to swallow the pill, you know, like the red pill.
Yeah.
The red pill.
Yeah.
Right. So these moments like we're in right now, this is a moment of dramatic power shift, but where's the power shifting? Are you ceding more power away from yourself, or are you seating power? Are you sitting in your power, the stillness yourself? I'm trying to get my camera to focus on me again.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, are my eyes going bad? Nope.
But yeah, this is just this energy of the arousal is a shake up that is a wake up. That's the simplest way to put it.
Shake up that's a wake up.
And hopefully that's where we're all at, continually shaking things up and waking things up in our own life. And yeah, those lightning storms, it's very Gemini season too.
And I kind of
This
think
time
of
of year.
how if you have bought into the like, this is a prison, your body's a prison, this is just a place where you've been trapped spiritually because God hates you or something and you need to get out and whatever, then maybe this lightning bolt can like come and like re energize you to be like, oh yeah, like the earth is fucking gorgeous. Like it's amazing. Have you seen this shit out there? Like it's incredible. Like whew, my body's amazing. It works beautifully. It has really incredible skills that you can unlock. I can unlock them as I go. Like this is crazy awesome. And let that lightning just like bring it back in, move things
Yeah, and
around.
I should have made this. I should have pointed this out earlier when we were talking Gnosticism. I thought it was a slide, so I thought I was just going to get to it. I guess it wasn't. Oddly enough, I really thought it was. Maybe I skipped it accidentally, but three glaring contradictions with Gnosticism.
Oh yeah.
It should be obvious to anybody. First of all, you're commenting about higher dimensions and realities that I personally don't believe you know jack shit about. I've experienced a lot of wild expanded consciousness experiences. I've done DMT. Do you know what I know about that realm? Not much.
Yeah.
Not much.
Right.
So, I mean, excuse me for not just taking your word for it. Second of all, especially when the word you're giving me came from someone else and that came from someone else, and it's a game of telephone across the ages. Secondly, if the lower God, the evil God, is an emanation of a higher God that is somehow perfect and good or balanced or something, why doesn't it just fix this? If
Yeah.
if we are shards of the true God or the true source trapped in matter by this evil demiurge, well, that makes no sense to me, because if that was the real true God, how do you fragment it and trap pieces of it in something if it's the true omnipotent being of all reality? Excuse me, this doesn't make sense. And thirdly, the real hell of it is literally that you're giving so much power to evil
Yeah.
in your mind, in your worldview.
Yeah.
Everything becomes evil to you because this is a prison, your body's a cage. And even if you're like having a nice day, in the root of it, you're just like, yeah, but this sucks. I'm in samsara. It's all illusion. It's Maya. There's nothing I can do. I'm defeated. Or what I can do is to become so overly spiritualized, in a sense, the mystic versus the mechanistic, simulation theory or head in the clouds, mysteria. Choose your flavor, but they both have the same result. It's called death. Death is the result. Like when I bet you can relate. When you're so far out there heading in the clouds and like trying to transcend the body that it's all you focus on. And I know this literally because I spent a lot of time like this and not being grounded and not doing grounding practices. Your body starts to be like, oh, this is you want that experience? You don't want a body? All right, we're just going to shut her down. Well, that we'll give you heads up. We're shutting things down. This is going to start to go wrong, and that's turning off. This is the order we're going to do it, but let's get out of here. We're done. Wrap it up. This guy doesn't want to be in here. He's done. He wants to exist on the spiritual dimension only. And that's the signal you're giving your body when you're in the mystic mode without grounding. And I know this because I was there, and I heard my body started to do that. And then I got grounded and started grounding regularly. And my body was like, oh, cool. Okay. Let's do it. All right, let's live. All right. So anyway, those are the three problems with Gnosticism.
Yeah.
Commenting on realms you don't know shit about, putting way too much power on evil, and the obvious contradiction of like, wouldn't the real God stop this? I don't get it.
Plus, I like this idea too that seems obvious to me, but it's not obvious in any tradition really, or most of them. It's not that like we're here to be human, and being human is actually the whole goal. And like you don't need to want to be something else but human. Like human is actually sort of its own pinnacle of experience. We look around us, we're like, wow, being human is very unique and very different from everything else. And even demons, whatever that might be, when you like kind of get into that whole realm, like they want to be us, or could like take over us. And so obviously being human is pretty cool. And so really becoming like as human as you can be, that is its own like superpower, and
Be all you can be.
yeah. But for yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
word.
Yes. And I know we should wrap things up, but I always want you to tell people who might not know what your favorite ways for them to support you or connect with you might be.
Innerversepodcast.com has got all my content living there. There's two ways to do it in terms of support me. You can get on Rockfin, which your people are familiar with. At this point, we have so much good overlap in audience. Really what happened is I came into your world and like a bunch of your people now follow me because I had some audience and they now follow you, but like I've benefited greatly in terms of I don't want to say exposure, but just like being able to connect with people that can vibe with this. Meeting you was super helpful for that because we are so aligned in the way we see things, the way we speak about things. So I bet a lot of your community already knows I'm on Rockfin, also Patreon. So Rockfin's $10 a month. You get my stuff, you get Lindsay's stuff. My premium second hour shows are on Rockfin. Getting a lot of new people signing up to my channel through there. But they also pay me in video game money. I mean, cryptocurrency, which I don't love that much. We'll see how it goes. I'm still new to it. I'm going to do my best to make that work out in my favor. But Patreon, despite being an evil corporation that censors people, and they're not messing with me yet. And so if you sign up to my Patreon, it's only $5. And you get the whole archive of everything I ever did. Rockfin, I'm catching up the archives. It's taken a while. So it's $10 a month, you get Rockfin and you get all the other people on it, or $5 a month, you get Patreon, just my stuff. I get actual
money,
real money,
yeah.
Dollars, not real, just a different layer of video game money, honestly, but more immediately usable. So it's up to you which way you would want to get my extended content. Either way works, or you can just tune in for free on YouTube or with the podcast app. Love talking to people on Telegram. Lindsay's got a fun group. I've got a fun group. Hit us up for a link to that if you haven't found one already. Telegram seems like an awesome way. What I like about it, I say this all the time, but it's like a human replacement of Google, where you can ask your group or a couple groups a question and you get real human beings that answer based on their experience and their life perspective and their worldview, instead of what the corporate AI wants you to get as an answer.
And sometimes a lot of that's really hard to find and hidden now too, so it's super valuable.
Yeah, with censorship, how it is, a lot of that, like, luckily some smart people are saving links, and those links can even disappear. Get it offline. I had a Google Drive document removed a few weeks back. That was creepy. I've had emails mess with. You've had that. The artificial consciousness is not happy with us, Lindsay.
That's why I try to.
But it knows it can't actually fuck with us beyond just like hurting our reach algorithmically. Like you and I, any level of psychic attack or demonic attack, like we know it when we see it, so it doesn't really get far.
Yeah. Just keep out. We have good walls.
Yeah. We know who we are.
Yeah. So Patreon, Rockfin, and Telegram are the best ways to connect with you, and I know they can at least link over to your site below wherever you guys are watching. You'll see it there. Excuse me. And what are your final thoughts that you want to share with people, or final words of wisdom?
Oh, well, man, I thought I was done.
I know. You're like, let's drop all the wisdom and like the deepest esoteric philosophical like exploration, but then ask for more.
Life doesn't need forcing. That's what I want to tell you. The woo way, the effortless way, effortless effort has nothing to do with not trying and everything to do with not fighting a losing battle, not trying to force something that doesn't fit, a round peg in a square hole, whatever. Like if this wasn't going to work out for us to talk on this trip, and I may have kind of hammered at a peg, like I may be breaking my own rule here, but to the best degree possible, just follow what is effortless for you because of how much you care about it. That's the secret of effortless effort, is care and divine timing, which means allowing, it's sort of like being motivated, running on a motor, needing that gasoline, that oil, that blood to control where you go on the surface of the water, versus opening up those sails and letting the wind take you where it wants. because you're infinite. So that wind is going to take you everywhere eventually. And it might have a reason why it goes in the order that it goes. But when you try to motor your way through stuff, motivate yourself, there can be like I'm saying here, if you're really excited about it, no motivation is required, and nothing ever happened that care was not invested in. So just invest your care in the places where things flow and where you feel love and where you feel excited and where energy comes out of whatever it is, and not where it leaves you feel a drained battery, like an empty matrix battery in your pod that's just been sucked dry because of how hard you had to try. Try is a funny thing. Yoda was right. Just do or do not. And like, you will do it if you care. So just put your emphasis on what you care about. You'll love your life if you do things that you love regularly. And that's just a fact. If you think you can't afford to do the things you love for whatever reason, you really need to do some things you love. Yeah. You're hurting in that place. It's not fun. So, and for me, even a time of my life, that was actually playing video games 40 hours a week. And now we can talk about these things at depth because we've both been in those virtual worlds. So, and some people are still in them regularly. We might not be reaching them right now, but you just don't know the ripple effect of this type of conversation, and even healing your own worldview out there listening. Worldview healing is all we ever did. Worldview healing is self-view healing. From the inward dot, the outward roll.
Amen. Well said. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom according to the smooth sailor, Chance Garton of Innerverse. Chance, thank you so much for presenting all of this with us tonight. It has been a pleasure to participate.
Thank you. Always a blast to hang out. Hope we get to high five in real life in a few days. I think it's going to happen.
I'm very excited for that. And ascension is not what we have been told, and we have been robbed of our innate abilities via reliance on technologies that barely mimic what our true potential holds. Not even robbed, because we give away our birthright by our own consent. Most of the time it is not informed consent, and we watch those around us crumble under the temptation of ease and comfort alongside the promise to become more than we ever were or thought we could be. And the truth is, we already were everything. We already had every potentiality within us, and we already contained the tools to become whatever we wish. The true archons exist only within your mind, and only as much as you consent to let them take up space there. It is long past time you stood sovereign in the truth of who you are. Human was never meant to be a limiting label. On the contrary, being fully human is the highest goal. Until you find what it means to transmute your animal state and become human, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Domestic terrorists.
They're not wearing masks?
Domestic terrorists. It's that basic, it's that simple.
And the question is, how are we going to really almost deprogram these people?
These extremists, authoritarians, fascists, bigots, racists, nativists, even libertarians.
They're not wearing masks?
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Oversensitize them to what we have to do.
Potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
We've made it our mission to limit the spread of this disease and to limit the risks to lives and to our economy. We've been clear from the beginning that getting together in groups outside of your household that is not permitted is not allowed.
And when need to make it clear to them that the vaccine is the ticket back to pre-pandemic life. And the window to do that is very narrowing.
This nation, this idea called America, was and always will be a new world. Our new world.
Today we're taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis.
They're not wearing masks.
You know the old expression about snitches? Well, in this case, snitches get rewards. We want to thank you for turning folks in and making sure we are all safe.
Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work? I am.
I'ma have a lava lamp in my FEMA camp. I'ma have a lava lamp in my FEMA camp. I'ma have a lava lamp in my FEMA camp. I'ma have a lava lamp in my FEMA camp.